Chapter 678. Thinking of the soul-departing palace, Yang Dingtian didn't feel joy, but a chill. That's right, he didn't have a good impression of the soul-departing palace. This was because the soul-departing palace had once captured Poisa and made her pregnant. As for Zhu Qingzhu and Duda Murin, they had both obtained special powerful energy from the soul-departing palace, but they had also fallen. Although the two of them had obtained different degrees of freedom, there was no doubt that they had fallen. However, he had never heard of the soul-departing palace in the taboo continent. Of course, he had never heard of the soul-departing palace not being in the taboo continent. Zhu Qingzhu and Du Gushao had never said where the soul-departing palace was. But Yang Dingtian had a feeling that the soul-leaving palace might be able to appear anywhere. Perhaps it would be fixed in one place forever because it was basically the world's top secret. However, after the ecstasy in his heart, Yang Dingtian hoped that the dilapidated palace floating in the air wasn't the soul-departing palace. Yang Dingtian wasn't mentally prepared to enter the soul-departing palace. Now wasn't the time. Next, Ling Bai gradually regained her consciousness and didn't say anything else. Even when she saw the palace in the distance, her eyes only lit up slightly. "Thank you, Yang Dingtian," Ling Bai suddenly said. "Madam, how did you recognize me?" Yang Dingtian commented. Currently, his beard was already half a foot long, but Ling Bai was still able to recognize him. "Although you, the Devil Vulture King, have lost a lot of weight, you are still the Devil Vulture King. Many people know that you came to the taboo continent for the duel with Wu Yuming," Ling Bai said. Yang Dingtian nodded. It wasn't strange that she recognized him. After a moment, Ling Bai said, "Yang Dingtian, can I ask you for a favor?" "Speak," Yang Dingtian said. "Can you not ask me about the Vulture Palace and everything about Wu Yuming?" Ling Bai said, "You can kill me, but don't ask me, okay?" Yang Dingtian nodded and said, "Okay, I won't ask." Then, the two of them fell into silence. "Madam, I'm going to recover my profound qi. You should also hurry up and recover," Yang Dingtian said. Then, Yang Dingtian consumed a profound gathering pill and began to recover his profound qi. The floating palace looked very close, but it was very far away. The Demon Vulture King walked for 200 miles, but he still hadn't arrived. Soon, the Demon Vulture King's Xian Qi was exhausted. Yang Dingtian came down and said to Ling Bai, "Madam, lie on my body, I'll carry you." Ling Bai blushed and said, "There's no need. I'll walk by myself." "Yang Dingtian, I'm not being courteous with you, but the three of us need to conserve our Xian Qi. Your weight is nothing." "Oh, okay," Ling Bai said. Then, she lay on Yang Dingtian's back. Ling Bai's weight was indeed nothing much. After suffering in the taboo continent for so long, her originally plump body had slimmed down a lot. She was less than 50 kilograms now. Yang Dingtian carried her on his back, and then carried the Demon Vulture King on his back. The Demon Vulture King had also lost a lot of weight, about half of it. Under 5 times the gravity, there was only half of its original weight of 50,000 kilograms left. Seeing Yang Dingtian not only carrying her, but also carrying the huge Demon Vulture King, Ling Bai was stunned at first, and then a strange feeling rippled out. Yang Dingtian had also lost a lot of weight, so his back was not wide, and his bones had even reached her chest. However, even so, the man's back was still very strong. At this moment, Ling Bai suddenly remembered. It was this man who killed her own son. In the Vulture Palace, she had already shouted for him to kill more than once. She even directly suggested Wulingzi to kill Yang Dingtian. Therefore, her hatred for him should be as deep as the sea. However, she didn't expect that it was only now that Ling Bai remembered Yang Dingtian's hatred for killing her son. Moreover, this hatred had become very strange. In terms of hatred, of course, it was hatred. Ling Shi and Vulture were both her biological children, but because of special reasons, she didn't like Vulture. Because Vulture was doted on by Wulingzi, it was lawless in the Vulture Palace and was not close to its mother. But Ling Shi was different. Ling Bai knew that this son of Ling Shi was not a good person, but he had a sweet mouth and knew how to please her. Therefore, Ling Bai loved this son very much. Therefore, when Ling Shi returned to the Vulture Palace and became a walking corpse, her hatred for Yang Dingtian in her heart was incomparable. She couldn't wait to find Yang Dingtian and fight him to the death. At this moment, her hatred for Yang Dingtian was still there. But it was as if it was not the Yang Dingtian who was carrying her, but another Yang Dingtian. It was as if the Yang Dingtian in the taboo continent and the Yang Dingtian outside were two different people. And there was one more thing. If Yang Dingtian died, then she, Ling Bai, would definitely die as well. In fact, if Yang Dingtian had not saved her, she would have died. Yang Dingtian carried the Demon Vulture King and Ling Bai for a full 500 miles. Finally, this dilapidated temple was above his head. This dilapidated temple was 100 meters above his head. Yang Dingtian was in a dilemma because he could not fly now, but he did not know how to go up. Of course, because it was anti-gravity, it was very easy to go up. He just had to release his grip on the ground and fall down. But after entering the temple, if he needed to land again, he would not be able to. However, Yang Dingtian still had a way. She took out the demonic silk rope from her interspatial ring. The tenacity of this demonic silk was extremely astonishing. Just one strand could withstand the weight of several hundred kilograms. And this rope, which was not even as thick as a pinky finger, was woven from hundreds of strands of demonic silk. It was more than 100 meters long. "Madam, your sword," Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai handed the bloody black gold sword to him. Yang Dingtian suddenly stabbed the 3-foot-long bloody black gold sword into the hard ground. Not only that, he also grabbed the sword and injected the mystic fire into it, splitting the sword tip and forcefully sticking it under the rock. Then, he used the mystic fire to completely fuse the hard rock and the bloody black gold sword together. The other end of the rope was tied to the Demon Vulture King's claws. That's right, he wanted the Demon Vulture King to enter the palace. "Yang Dingtian, I don't have to go in," Ling Bai suddenly said. Of course, she knew in her heart that within tens of thousands of miles, there was only one palace. Then, this palace was definitely not simple. There must be a fortuitous encounter. In fact, this palace was the only powerful opportunity. In front of such an opportunity, anyone would want to monopolize it. Yang Dingtian was no exception. Therefore, she took the initiative to withdraw to avoid attracting a fatal disaster. Yang Dingtian glanced at her and said, "Madam, since we have come to the palace, then we are all fated people. Let's go up together." Then, Yang Dingtian grabbed the Demon Vulture King's claws with one hand and hugged Ling Bai's waist with the other. Ling Bai's face turned slightly red. She was no longer young, but she was a high-level master-level expert after all. Therefore, like her master's wife, she looked like a beautiful young woman in her 30s. To be honest, Ling Bai was much more beautiful than Vulture. Whether it was her figure or her face. In fact, Ling Bai's appearance was somewhat similar to Yin Yan's. She had a delicate and charming baby face with big eyes, a delicate nose, and a small mouth. Therefore, she might be older than Madame Shiman, but she looked even younger than Madame Shiman. Her beautiful little face looked like it was made of jade, pure and flawless. However, upon closer inspection, there was a trace of seductiveness. Now, she had lost a lot of weight. If she regained her plump body, she would be even more attractive. In short, this woman's appearance was not inferior to Madame Shiman's. "Ah, Claw, it's up to you," Yang Dingtian said. "Ga." The Demon Vulture King cried out excitedly and then loosened its claws. Whoosh! One beast and 2 people fell from the sky at high speed. This was 5 times the gravity, so the kinetic energy under the acceleration of gravity was undoubtedly huge. Yang Dingtian was really afraid that the Devil's Silk Rope would not be able to withstand the force. However, there was no need to worry. This was a piece of cake for the demon vulture king. Bang! With a loud sound, its huge body smashed into the roof of the palace. That's right, this palace looked like it was upside down with the roof facing down. This was equivalent to falling from a height of 100 meters and smashing into the ground. Under 500 gravity, ordinary demon beasts would have had their bones broken. However, the demon vulture king was safe and sound. Yang Dingtian climbed to the front of the palace and pushed the door open. Suddenly, an astonishing surge of energy rushed towards him. That feeling was too strange. It was as if a person who had been naked for dozens of days instantly jumped into a pure green lake. That kind of refreshing feeling was completely indescribable. The half of Yang Dingtian's face that had entered the temple instantly surged with endless energy. "Madam, you can come up," Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai carefully climbed up and entered the temple. Then, Yang Dingtian was a little embarrassed. Because the door of the temple was not big enough, the demon vulture king could not enter. Yang Dingtian could not help but look at the demon vulture king. It grinned at Yang Dingtian, then shook its head, indicating that it would not enter. Then, it pretended to lie on the roof of the palace. Yang Dingtian thought for a while, then pulled out his sword and slashed at the walls on both sides of the palace door. Ling Bai was shocked and said in horror, "Yang Dingtian, what are you doing?" "Smashing the wall." Yang Dingtian said, "Otherwise, a claw will not be able to enter." Ling Bai's face changed. You are crazy. This palace may be left behind by God. It is the only thing that can make you strong. Aren't you afraid of God's anger?" Yang Dingtian said with a smile, "At most, when I leave, I will mend the wall." If this palace was left behind by God, then he definitely did not expect a demon vulture to come in. If he knew, he would definitely make the door bigger. In a few moments, Yang Dingtian tore down half of the wall of the palace. Suddenly, the door opened. Yang Dingtian shouted at the demon vulture king, "A claw, come in quickly." "Ga." The demon vulture king cried out excitedly. Then, with a swoosh, it entered the palace. "Wow! It's so comfortable." Yang Dingtian lay down on his back. This temple was upside down, so it was better for the gravity field. Yang Dingtian could lie on it comfortably. After Ling Bai entered, she also felt incomparably ecstatic. This was because the profound qi energy in this place was simply too rich and dense. Just what level had he reached? In one sentence, it could be explained clearly. Why would the Xian qi within a radius of 10,000 miles be so thin? Because it was all gathered here. The density of the Xian qi here was tens of thousands of times that of the Chaos World, hundreds of times that of the Despair City, and hundreds of times that of the Five Elements Hall. It could be said that the Xian qi energy here had already condensed into a ball. If this was not a kind of energy but a kind of gas, it would have already condensed into a solid state. Just as Ling Bai was about to cultivate, she saw Yang Dingtian sprawled on the ground, motionless. "Yang Dingtian, aren't you going to cultivate first?" Ling Bai asked. "Madam, please do as you please. I'll rest for a while first." Yang Dingtian said, "I've walked for tens of thousands of miles. I've always been trembling in fear. If I'm not careful, I'll fall into the deep sky. I've never slept while lying down. Now, I'm going to have a good sleep. Madam, don't worry about me." Ling Bai was stunned. Shouldn't anyone be overjoyed and quickly cultivate after entering the palace? Who would lie down and rest first? Of course, once a person entered the Xian Qi breathing technique, they would lose all defense and be at the mercy of others. Therefore, if Yang Dingtian were to lie down and rest while Ling Bai Rua started to cultivate using the mystic Qi breathing technique, it would become extremely dangerous. Yang Dingtian would be able to do anything to her with ease. Be it rape or murder, she wouldn't have any defensive ability. Otherwise, she would instantly suffer from qi deviation and her qi vessel would explode. But for some reason, Ling Bai was not worried at all. She closed her eyes and began to cultivate. This was a very, very strange feeling. Even if this person was an enemy, you could be very at ease and completely trust that he would not take the opportunity to harm you. Perhaps, this was really an extraordinary charm. Ling Bai had just begun to cultivate when she realized that the Xian Qi energy was pouring in at a terrifying rate. Like a dam bursting, endless tides surged in. In just a moment, her energy reserve was filled and then expanded. Boom! Immediately after, her body and divine sense became nothingness. At such a fast speed, Ling Bai directly broke through from a 6-star Grandmaster to a 7-star Grandmaster. Yang Dingtian was lying on his back, and the Demon Vulture King was also lying on his back. However, its body was too big and directly occupied all the space in the palace. Yang Dingtian patted its belly and said, "All right, don't be lazy. It's time to cultivate." Then, Yang Dingtian stood up, sat cross-legged on the ground, and began to cultivate. Boom, 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 boom. In an instant, Yang Dingtian was shocked. What the fuck was going on? The speed at which the Xian Qi was pouring in was too terrifying. It was completely tearing open all the entrances of the Xian meridians and crazily surging in. The energy reserve that had been dried up for an unknown period of time was instantly moistened and then quickly filled up. Immediately after, Yang Dingtian was even more shocked to discover that during this period of time, he did not fight or cultivate. He only walked, and under 5 times the anti-gravity, he walked tens of thousands of miles. There was actually such a large empty space in his energy reserve. His energy reserve had actually doubled in size. This was breaking through to the Great Grandmaster realm. Chapter 679. Yang Dingtian opened his eyes. He didn't know if it was because he was lucky or because the devil's silk didn't conduct electricity. His body had exploded into a ball of sparks, but the devil's silk rope was still intact. Yang Dingtian suddenly exerted force and struggled to the door of the temple. Ling Bai hurriedly pulled him in. After entering the hall, Yang Dingtian immediately sat down and began to absorb qi. Immediately, endless profound energy surged in like a tide, pouring into his dried-up qi si. Yang Dingtian used his divine sense to carefully observe his qi si and found that the space in his qi si was not only twice or 3 or 4 times larger than before. It was much, much larger. And vaguely, the entire qi si was releasing a golden light. It was completely different when one reached the Great Grandmaster realm. In this world, only those who had reached the Great Grandmaster realm could be considered to be standing at the top of the pyramid. But even if the qi si's space had expanded many times, it couldn't stop the qi energy surging in like a tide. 6 hours later, Yang Dingtian's qi si was once again filled with qi. Then, as expected, the qi si began to expand. Boom! The entire qi si and divine sense once again fell into nothingness. Yang Dingtian broke through to the 2-star Great Grandmaster realm. Sure enough, the Great Grandmaster realm was an extremely difficult hurdle. As long as one broke through to the Great Grandmaster realm, everything would be easy. The following breakthroughs wouldn't be so difficult. After breaking through to the 2-star Great Grandmaster realm, qi still surged in. However, after 3 tremors, the entire qi si began to stop. There was no more space to accommodate qi. Yang Dingtian's breakthrough officially stopped. In other words, this bitter journey of tens of thousands of miles allowed him to break through to the 2-star Great Grandmaster realm. After waking up again, Yang Dingtian was thinking about a question in his mind. Kue Si, Duan Ruyan, Yun Kalin, Song Shao, and a bunch of other 9-star Great Grandmasters. Some had reached the 9-star Great Grandmaster realm in a few years, and some had reached it in more than 10 years, but they still hadn't broken through to the Great Grandmaster realm. Was it because they lacked the external force of heaven and earth? And this outer layer wasn't so easy to encounter. In that case, could Yang Dingtian's mystic fire lightning be used as an external force to help these people break through to the Great Grandmaster realm? If possible, it would be equivalent to Yang Dingtian suddenly having many more Great Grandmasters to help him. Furthermore, as long as one broke through the martial Grandmaster level, the following breakthroughs would become relatively easier. Basically, one could reach the intermediate martial Grandmaster level or above. However, this was undoubtedly dangerous, but Yang Dingtian could experiment with the mystic flame lightning from small to large. If he succeeded, it would be of great help to the Council of Light. Claw, how are you? Yang Dingtian asked. It wasn't easy for the Demon Vulture King either. The past few months of hard work wasn't just Yang Dingtian's hard work, but also the Demon Vulture King's hard work. The demon vulture was a type of demonic beast and also a type of mount. Therefore, it couldn't be compared to those demonic beasts that were hundreds or thousands of years old. Their lifespan was generally less than 100 years. Yang Dingtian's claw, as the Demon Vulture King, happened to be in its 30s this year and was in its prime. Its cultivation was previously equivalent to a 7th-class demonic beast, which was a martial venerable level demonic beast. A martial venerable level demonic beast might not be considered a top expert to a martial artist. Among the demonic beasts, it might not be very strong. For example, Song Chuanhua's demon fire phoenix was extremely powerful as soon as it was born. It alone destroyed thousands of flying mounts. However, among the mounts, the Demon Vulture King was undoubtedly the unique king. It had once killed hundreds of golden eagles by itself. Hearing Yang Dingtian's question, Claw lowered its head and rubbed against Yang Dingtian's face, letting Yang Dingtian see. Yang Dingtian tried hard to find, it seemed to have become more handsome and its eyes were brighter. However, this kind of thing was very subjective and he couldn't see anything. Claw rubbed Yang Dingtian's face with the top of its head again. Ling Bai said, "It's asking you to look at its crown." Yang Dingtian took a closer look and found that it was indeed different. Previously, the Demon Vulture King's crown was purple but now it had turned blood red. This might mean that it had broken through to the 8th class. Heavens! Yang Dingtian knew that in the Earth Fisher City's Devil Eagle Legion, it was unknown when the last 8th class Devil Eagle was born. There really wasn't a single demon vulture that could break through to the 8th class. This was equivalent to a grandmaster among the demonic beasts. Ah, Claw, you're awesome. You're amazing. Yang Dingtian rubbed its neck. The Demon Vulture King raised its neck proudly and wanted to cry out. However, it slammed into the roof with a bang and quickly lowered its head. I've decided. When we go back, I'll find you a girl. You're the leader after all, so you have to have a wife, right? Look at the younger demon vultures, they're already in pairs. Yang Dingtian said. Plop. The Demon Vulture King immediately lay on the ground with its belly facing the sky and closed its eyes to pretend to be dead. Ling Bai laughed at the side and then said with bright eyes, "Your relationship with it is really good. It's completely different from our Vulture Palace's attitude towards the Black Vulture King. Not only me, every knight in the Earth Fisher City treats the Demon Vulture King as a comrade and a brother." Yang Dingtian said. Yang Dingtian continued to touch the Demon Vulture King's neck and asked, "By the way, how many black vultures are there in your Vulture Palace?" Ling Bai suddenly fell silent. "If you don't want to say, then don't say." Yang Dingtian said. "Around 230,000. Suddenly, Ling Bai said. "Fuck." Yang Dingtian couldn't help but curse. The black vulture was different from the golden vulture. Their fighting strength was second only to the demon vulture, and they were even more ferocious. Yang Dingtian thought that it would be great to have 30 to 50,000 black vultures. After all, the Earth Fisher City only had 3,000 black vultures. Who knew that Ling Bai would say 230,000 black vultures? How could they fight? With so many black vultures, all the barbarians in the southern barbarian continent wouldn't be enough to feed them. Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai turned her head and said, not only barbarians, but all the beasts in the southern barbarian continent, even the demonic beasts, would be fed to the black vultures. In fact, our vulture palace can't afford to feed them now. But the more black vultures there are, the more powerful the vulture palace will be. Yang Dingtian's scalp went numb. Hundreds of thousands of black vultures, how could they fight? If these hundreds of thousands of black vultures attacked Zhongjing, then the result would be unimaginable. If they really fought, millions of soldiers wouldn't be enough to feed these black vultures. Yang Dingtian once again deeply felt the thorny problem of the vulture palace. He took a deep breath and said, Madam, if I defeat Wu Yuming in a duel, is it possible that the spirit vulture palace will become our ally? Impossible. Ling Bai said bluntly, even if Wu Yuming dies, it's still impossible. Moreover, I have no right to speak in the vulture palace, including my husband. Everything in the vulture palace is decided by the old beast, the ancestors. Yang Dingtian continued to touch the demon vulture king's neck and said, A claw, you're so powerful now. Are you afraid to fight with the black vultures? The demon vulture king suddenly opened its eyes and let out a mighty howl. Its claw clenched into a fist and suddenly raised. It meant that killing the black vultures was not a problem. Then how many can you kill? Yang Dingtian asked. The demon vulture king tilted its head and thought for a while. It stretched out both of its claws, a total of 8 claws. 8? Yang Dingtian said. The demon vulture king shook its head. 80? Yang Dingtian asked. The demon vulture king thought for a while and shook its head. You can kill 800. Yang Dingtian said. The demon vulture king shook its head desperately and kept gesturing with its 8 claws. 88? Yang Dingtian said. The demon vulture king nodded vigorously. Really useless. There are 230,000 of them. Yang Dingtian said. Oh. The demon vulture king rolled its eyes, belly facing the sky, and pretended to be dead. Yang Dingtian, what should we do next? Ling Bai suddenly asked. Yes, what should we do next? Should we continue to explore, or should we stay in this palace and cultivate? Or should we find a way to leave? What do you think? Yang Dingtian asked. I wish to stay here for the rest of my life and not go out. Ling Bai said. I must go out. Yang Dingtian said, however, I can't go out with my current cultivation. I have to be at least a 6-star Great Grandmaster before I can go out. Ling Bai said, but isn't the date of the duel with Wu Yuming already over? Yang Dingtian asked, Madam, when did you enter the taboo continent? February 3rd. Ling Bai said. Then how long do you think you have been in the taboo continent? Yang Dingtian asked. I don't know. Maybe less than 2 months. Ling Bai said. Yang Dingtian said, I entered the taboo continent on January 19th, which means that I was only half a month earlier than you. However, I feel that I have been in there for 4 or even 5 months. Do you know what this means? Ling Bai's eyes trembled. The gravity here is 5 times that outside. Of course, you don't understand when I say gravity. The day here is 30 hours, and the night is 30 hours, which is exactly 5 times that of the outside world. Doesn't that mean that one day in the chaos world is 5 days in the taboo continent? Yang Dingtian said, so, I have been here for nearly half a year. In fact, only a month has passed in the chaos world. Ling Bai said, do you have any evidence? No, this is just my guess. Yang Dingtian said, previously, my mind was filled with breaking through to the Great Grandmaster realm, so I didn't think carefully. Now that I have broken through to the Great Grandmaster realm, my mind is clear, and I thought of this. You mean, if you are right, then there are still more than 2 months before your duel with Wu Yuming in the Chaos World. In the Taboo Continent, it is equivalent to another year? Ling Bai asked. Yes. Yang Dingtian said. Caw, caw, caw. Ling Bai didn't say anything. The demon vulture king suddenly squawked excitedly and didn't care about pretending to be dead. Yang Dingtian said, if my guess is right, then I still have a full year of cultivation in the taboo continent. I have almost absolute confidence that I can break through to the 6-star Great Grandmaster realm and fight with Wu Yuming. And then? Ling Bai asked. So, I feel that we should continue to go deeper, continue to explore, and continue to take risks. Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai said, I have an idea. Go ahead. Yang Dingtian said. Why don't we return tens of thousands of miles the way we came, and then walk tens of thousands of miles back? This way, our qi si will expand, and it will be safer to come to the palace to devour the Xian qi, Ling Bai said. Yang Dingtian was silent for a long time before saying, your idea is safer. But I feel that the reason why our previous arduous cultivation was useful was because we didn't know that there was a palace here. Now that we know, this kind of arduous cultivation is meaningless, and the breakthrough won't be great. And I feel that if we do this, we'll never be able to get out. Ling Bai was stunned, and then nodded. If they circled around this palace, they might never be able to get out. It was easy to enter this damned place, but it was too difficult to get out. Then you decide. I'll listen to you. Ling Bai said, when I was young, I listened to my parents, then I listened to that ancestor, then I listened to my husband. In any case, I've always listened to others. Yang Dingtian didn't express any opinions about her words. Alright, let's sleep first. After we wake up naturally, we'll continue exploring. Yang Dingtian said. Then, he lay directly on the demon vulture king's stomach and patted it. Ah, Claw, make your stomach softer, and then pump up a little. Let me find the feeling of being on the Simmons bed. Ah, Claw did as he was told. It was indeed much more comfortable. It was soft and elastic, even more comfortable than the Simmons mattress. Ling Bai shrank in the corner of the hall. Yang Dingtian patted the demon vulture king's stomach and said, Madam, why don't you come over and sleep too? Ling Bai was stunned. Is this okay? Yang Dingtian said, anyway, don't worry. I definitely won't do anything to you. I was crazy before. Yes, I know. Ling Bai said, and then lay on the demon vulture king's stomach and lay down to sleep. Gulp. The demon vulture king snorted in dissatisfaction, and then closed its eyes to sleep. That night, the demon vulture king didn't sleep well at all, because it didn't dare to turn over. It was afraid that if it turned over, the two people on its stomach would roll to the ground. It even had a nightmare. It dreamed that Yang Dingtian really found a wife for it, and they even gave birth to 2 children. Then, the 2 children slept on its stomach. Every time it wanted to turn over, it would dream that it had also pressed its children down. Every time, it would break out in cold sweat. It was dark outside, and one couldn't even see their fingers. Yang Dingtian, who was sleeping soundly, didn't notice that the palace was moving at all. That's right, the palace suddenly moved, and then it kept flying towards the west. However, one couldn't feel the slightest movement inside. The palace kept flying for who knows how many thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles. At this moment, a peerless beauty, like a demon, like a fairy, slowly flew to the door of the palace. Her beautiful eyes stared at Yang Dingtian, who was on the demon vulture king's stomach inside the palace. Although there was still Ling Bai and the demon vulture king, she didn't even look at them. She only stared at Yang Dingtian. This face was so beautiful that it was suffocating. It was even more beautiful than what Yang Dingtian had seen before. But it was still unforgettable. She was Dongfang Bingling, or rather, Princess Mu Dan. Chapter 680. Dongfang Bingling floated outside and looked at Yang Dingtian's face for a long time. In the past, she was arrogant. Now, she is even more arrogant. After looking for a quarter of an hour, she gently floated away like a shadow and disappeared into the endless horizon. If Yang Dingtian was awake, he would definitely be very curious about a question. This place is anti-gravity. Is she not afraid of falling into the deep space? How can she fly? Yang Dingtian hadn't slept for a few months. Therefore, he was in a deep sleep for a few days and nights. Moreover, the key point is that when this palace flew up, there was no movement at all. Ling Bai also slept for a long time. However, she did not sleep as long as Yang Dingtian. At first, she did not notice it. Later on, she noticed it because the hard rock plain outside the palace was moving. Originally, she would not notice it because the hard rock plain was endless. Everywhere was exactly the same. However, she suddenly saw a treasure sword inserted into the ground. Then, she discovered that it was getting further and further away. Therefore, she discovered that the palace was flying. She was shocked. Originally, she wanted to wake Yang Dingtian up. However, after hesitating for a moment, she saw Yang Dingtian sleeping soundly. Then, she saw the Devil Vulture King carefully sleeping soundly. Therefore, she did not make a sound. In any case, she did not want to go out at all. As for where the palace flew to, it was up to fate. She did not care. How long did Yang Dingtian sleep for? He slept for more than 30 hours. How did he wake up? He was awakened by the piercing. Outside, rays of dazzling light streaked past. Suddenly waking up, Yang Dingtian looked outside. This entire world, was it torn apart? Why is it so strange? Yang Dingtian quickly got up and walked to the entrance of the palace. He discovered that the palace was actually flying quickly. Because the scenery on the ground was constantly changing, the hard rock plain behind was getting further and further away. What is going on? How could this palace fly away on its own while he was sleeping? What the hell is this? What the hell was going on? The palace was flying at a very, very fast speed. It was fucking supersonic. Yang Dingtian wasn't joking. This palace was flying at supersonic speed. Based on the speed of the hard rock plains, Yang Dingtian estimated that they were traveling at least 1 to 2,000 li per hour. What was going on? Yang Dingtian was shocked. With such a fast speed, he could totally feel it. Why was there no trace of movement in the palace? If he was flying at supersonic speed, he would not be able to withstand the force. Then, Yang Dingtian looked up at the sky. He was shocked to find that the stars in the sky were motionless. That's right, the incomparably beautiful starry sky in the sky was actually motionless. This was really strange. Then, Yang Dingtian suddenly thought of something. It was not the palace that was flying, but the continent below that was moving. That's right, the entire forbidden continent was moving. Therefore, Yang Dingtian did not feel any force at all. Moreover, this place was anti-gravity. The source of gravity was the sky, not the land. Therefore, the forbidden continent's rapid movement would not cause any force to push it. Yang Dingtian turned around and saw that Ling Bai's expression was completely calm. He could not help but ask, "Madam, how long have I slept?" "It seems to be more than 20 hours, Ling Bai said. More than 20 hours was more than 30 hours. In other words, the forbidden continent had moved 70,000 to 80,000 li. How was this possible? The forbidden continent was not that big at all. No matter what kind of map the chaotic continent was, the forbidden continent was not that big. Yang Dingtian had walked tens of thousands of li. Now that the forbidden continent had moved 70,000 to 80,000 li, it added up to more than 100,000 li. From the eastern cloud continent to the northwest continent, it was not that big. In other words, the total area of the human countries was not that big. A forbidden continent had actually exceeded the area of a real human continent. If this wasn't a ghost, what was it? On the map of the chaotic world, where could such a large continent be hidden? You discovered long ago that the palace was flying? Yang Dingtian asked. Ling Bai nodded and said, I discovered it when I woke up about 20 hours ago. Yang Dingtian sighed hard. Don't you blame me for not waking you up? Ling Bai asked. Yang Dingtian sighed and said, what's there to be surprised about? Then where are we now? Ling Bai asked. Yang Dingtian raised his head and looked at the motionless starry sky. Then, he lowered his head and looked at the fast-moving land. Was there fucking land below? That's right, was there still land below? It was completely a void. What could be seen was only a ball of complicated light and shadow. It was black but not black, blue but not blue, and purple but not purple. There were also countless bolts of lightning striking. It was just that there was no sign of life. What void creatures? None of them existed. It was just a void. There was nothing at all. This scene was filled with a bizarre sci-fi feeling. It was as if they were not in the chaotic world, but some kind of interstellar space. Of course, this was not accurate. To be more precise, it was as if they were at the edge of some kind of world. Yang Dingtian, what do you think will happen if we jump down? Ling Bai suddenly asked. Maybe we'll return to 30 or 40 years ago, Yang Dingtian said. Immediately, Ling Bai's eyes lit up. Her beautiful eyes were restless. She actually wanted to jump down. Hey, don't be crazy. Yang Dingtian hurriedly pulled her back. If we can really return to 30 or 40 years ago, how good would that be? Ling Bai sighed and said, in that case, I'll definitely think of any way to leave the Vulture Palace. Ling Bai's beautiful eyes were filled with confusion and yearning. Yang Dingtian did not comfort her at all. He just looked at the bizarre void below. The taboo continent was still moving rapidly. Moving. Yang Dingtian really did not know how long the void below was, how far it was, and how long it would move for. At this time, the hard rock plain behind them had completely disappeared. And the void below was almost exactly the same. If it were not for the occasional burst of lightning, Yang Dingtian would not even know that it was moving. He really did not know how long it would fly and when it would stop. In short, Yang Dingtian stared at it for 4 to 6 hours, and it was still flying. Later on, Yang Dingtian simply stopped looking at it. He walked back to the palace and prepared to continue sleeping. At this time, the demon vulture king finally woke up. Soon, it discovered the abnormality outside and suddenly screamed. Yang Dingtian was about to comfort it, but it rushed out excitedly and hung its head outside the door. It excitedly looked at everything outside and the void below. Yang Dingtian originally wanted to stroke its neck, but in the end, he slapped it hard and said, "You're so stupid. You're not worried at all. Instead, you're so excited." The demon vulture king ignored him and hung its big head outside, looking at the void below foolishly. Yang Dingtian ignored it and lay on the floor to rest. Ling Bai also lay down beside him. Yang Dingtian completely underestimated the demon vulture king's boredom. It looked at the unchanging void below for 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. It was still lying there motionlessly. Ling Bai could not help but say, Is it stupid? It's the same scene, and it's not tired of looking at it for 10 hours. Yang Dingtian was really worried that the demon vulture king had become stupid. He quickly walked to the door and patted its neck hard, saying, "Okay, stop looking. If you keep looking, you'll really be stupid." The demon vulture king opened its eyes in a daze and glanced at Yang Dingtian. Then, it turned its head in another direction and continued to sleep. It turned out that it had been sleeping for the past 10 hours. Yang Dingtian said to Ling Bai, "It's not that it's stupid, it's us. It's staring at the boring void below and hypnotizing it. Isn't that right? How did the demon vulture king spend the past 10 hours?" Countless nightmares. Every nightmare had the same ending. It had turned over and pressed down on its own child. It could sleep with its head hanging outside and not have to worry about being on its stomach. It didn't have to worry about pressing down on others. It could turn over as it pleased. Anyway, that's what it means. It's my freedom to turn over or not. But if you forbid me from turning over, that's not allowed. Just as young Dingtian was about to fall asleep, he suddenly felt very hot. His whole body was hot and dry, and he couldn't sleep at all. Madam, do you feel hot? Yang Dingtian asked. Ling Bai trembled and said, No, I don't feel it. Yang Dingtian said, However, I feel very hot. Do you mind if I take off my clothes? No, I don't mind, Ling Bai said, and then carefully grabbed her clothes. Yang Dingtian took off his outer robe. After a while, Yang Dingtian said again, Madam, do you feel hot? No, it's not hot at all. Ling Bai said. After that, she tightened her belt and tugged at the hem of her skirt, covering her feet. Yang Dingtian took off his inner clothes, leaving only his undergarments. His face was a little red, and he was panting. After a while, Yang Dingtian asked, Madam, do you feel hot? Ling Bai's expression changed, and she shook her head vigorously. No, it's not hot at all. Then, she carefully fastened the soft buckle on her neck. Her face was filled with nervousness, and her beautiful face was snow-white. Thus, Yang Dingtian took off his pants. After a while, Yang Dingtian's face and ears were red, and his breathing was heavy. He breathed out hot air and said, Madam, you really don't feel hot. Then, he took off his underwear, and he was completely bare-chested. Ling Bai suddenly gritted her teeth and said coldly, Yang Dingtian, if you want to take me by force, just say it. There's no need to find excuses. What do you mean by hot? Anyway, I'm no longer clean. It doesn't matter who defile me. Yang Dingtian was stunned. He glanced at Ling Bai, and then looked at himself. Then, he carefully put on his undershirt and said, Madam, I really feel hot. I'm not thinking of having any dirty thoughts. Don't put on airs. You should feel a sense of accomplishment by taking Wu Yoming's mother-in-law and Vulture's mother. Ling Bai said coldly, and then suddenly turned around, waiting for Yang Dingtian to pounce on her. She didn't want to see his ugly appearance. When she turned around, she immediately saw a red sea in the distance. It was as if the entire sky, the entire land, was completely burning. Although the burning continent was still very far away from here, the temperature was already very, very high. It was really, really hot. Yang Dingtian pursed his dry lips and said, I knew it, it's really hot. The demon vulture king suddenly raised his head and cried out twice. He nodded his head vigorously and stuck out his tongue, indicating that he agreed with Yang Dingtian's words. It was really hot. Ah. Ling Bai's face instantly turned red, and she stammered, I am sorry. I have profound veins, so I usually don't feel hot. Yang Dingtian asked, Then do you feel hot now? Ling Bai grabbed her sleeves and stared at Yang Dingtian, I don't feel hot. Then, do I still need to take off my clothes now? Yang Dingtian was puzzled. Ling Shi and Vulture were both very smart and cunning. Why was this mother so? He couldn't help but stare at Ling Bai and frown. Madam Ling Bai, are Vulture and Ling Shi really your children? What do you mean? Ling Bai's face turned cold as she said coldly. No meaning. If you're unhappy, I won't ask. Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai suddenly gritted her teeth and turned around, that's right. Vulture isn't my husband's biological daughter. Are you satisfied? You know the scandal of the Vulture Palace. Are you satisfied? Yang Dingtian was stunned, and said, I was only asking if Ling Shi and Vulture were your biological children. I wasn't asking if they were your husband's biological children. What's the difference? Ling Bai said angrily. Yang Dingtian's face was so bitter that it frowned. The demon vulture king also turned its head and looked at Yang Dingtian helplessly. You also understand? Yang Dingtian asked the demon vulture king. The demon vulture king nodded its big head. Yang Dingtian gently patted its head and said, "Congratulations, a claw. Among the three of us, your IQ is ranked second." The demon vulture king nodded dejectedly. It felt that its IQ was higher than the woman in front of it, but it didn't feel proud at all. Yang Dingtian didn't understand at first. What was the difference between pure and stupid? Now, he understood. The kind that Dishi Bian was called pure. The woman in front of him was called stupid. Yang Dingtian had already seen the burning land, but by visual estimation, it was at least more than 1,000 miles away. More than 1,000 miles, and it was already so hot. If they landed on this continent, it would be terrible. They were getting closer and closer to the burning taboo continent. Yang Dingtian could no longer bear it. Even Ling Bai, who had yin xian veins, couldn't withstand the terrifying high temperature. The demon vulture king had already opened its mouth and hung its tongue down. "A claw, why didn't you remind me to bring the unfreezing water over?" Yang Dingtian said angrily. The demon vulture king's eyes widened, its mouth opened wide, revealing a completely innocent expression. It was too boring in the taboo continent. The demon vulture king's acting skills had improved greatly, and it could already make a variety of expressions. Just like that, they flew, getting hotter and hotter. Anyway, they didn't know how much time had passed. In short, the palace stopped in the sky above the raging flame continent. The temperature here, to be conservative, was at least a few degrees Celsius. No matter how unwilling Yang Dingtian was, no matter how painful it was, the palace still stopped and floated in the air more than 100 meters above the raging flame continent. Everything that could be seen below was all magma, all flames, and there was no place to stand. Even 100 meters above the ground, it was hundreds of degrees Celsius. The two of them had no choice but to use their profound energy to resist the terrifying heat. It means for us to go down, right? Ling Bai said. Yes, I think so. Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai looked down and said, but, there's no path down there. Not only was there no path, there was magma everywhere. The magma was thousands of degrees Celsius high temperature, and there was no place to stand. Yang Dingtian looked into the distance. This time, the taboo continent was much kinder. At least, it let you see your goal. In the distance. That's right, he didn't know how far it was. In short, it was very, very, very far away. There was an incomparably huge palace floating above the flames. That palace was crystal clear, as if it was carved out of ice and snow. Even though it was far away, it was still incomparably eye-catching. The reason for that was because everything that entered their line of sight was completely red. Only the enormous floating palace was snow blue in color. That should be Yang Dingtian's second destination. It was the end point of Yang Dingtian's second stage of cultivation. Next, it should be like this. Yang Dingtian had to walk thousands of miles of the raging flame continent to reach the ice palace. Then, he would begin to absorb profound energy and break through again. At this time, Yang Dingtian was in the sky above the raging flame plains. There was no profound energy. It was much thinner than the hard rock plains. There was still no way to cultivate. However, if there wasn't several times the gravity here and there wasn't anti-gravity, it would be good. He could directly fly over. Claw, try here. Can you fly? Yang Dingtian asked. Claw began to spread its wings and fly high. Plop! It fell down alive. Yang Dingtian circulated his profound energy and prepared to fly. Plop! He also fell down. He painfully discovered that not only could he not fly here. Moreover, it was still anti-gravity. That was not all. Moreover, it was 10 times the anti-gravity. The hard rock plains was 5 times the anti-gravity. Here, it was 10 times. The boundless raging flame plain was thousands of miles away from the floating ice palace, or perhaps even further. Below, there was no place to stand. It was all magma that could melt a person alive and turn them into ashes. Yang Dingtian looked at the starry sky and yelled out with all his strength, Fuck. At this moment, Ling Bai suddenly said from the side, Yang Dingtian, the temple we are in is burning. Yang Dingtian looked outside the temple. It could no longer withstand the high temperature and was burning fiercely. Fuck. Yang Dingtian grabbed the demon vulture king with one hand and Ling Bai with the other. He tied his soul sword with a rope and smashed it into the magma below. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian's huge strength ruthlessly dragged Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the demon vulture king to the magma ground. This was anti-gravity. After the palace flew, the 2 people and 1 beast would directly fly into the deep sky. Yang Dingtian suddenly released the demon spirit fire energy shield and used his powerful profound energy to resist the 10 times anti-gravity. He firmly grasped the magma ground. Then, he watched as the burning palace flew towards the deep sky. Looking at the endless magma around him and the ice palace that was already too low to be seen, Yang Dingtian let out a helpless howl in his heart. How the hell am I going to pass this second level? Chapter 681. Yang Dingtian was indeed going crazy. This magma was completely bottomless, and the temperature was thousands of degrees. It was not inferior to molten steel at all. If it was not anti-gravity, it would be fine. If a person stepped on a sword and floated on the magma, they would be able to slide out with a little force. However, what the hell was anti-gravity? Yang Dingtian was now a 2-star third-class grandmaster, and his cultivation was many times stronger than before. However, this was his cultivation base. His body still could not withstand the high temperature of thousands of degrees, and he still had to use his mystic chi to resist it. Therefore, he had to resist 10 times the anti-gravity and use an energy shield to resist the terrifying heat. The mystic chi in Yang Dingtian's body was like tap water, flowing with gushing sounds. However, the demon vulture king's body was so big, so the energy shield had to be incomparably large. I have to think of a way to cross this flaming plains in the shortest time possible. Yang Dingtian said, according to the mystic chi consumption rate of my energy shield, it will be completely exhausted in less than 2 hours. Originally, with Yang Dingtian's cultivation, an energy shield with a diameter of only 2 to 3 meters could only be maintained for about 15 minutes. Now, Yang Dingtian could maintain an energy shield of more than 10 meters for 2 hours. This cultivation base had increased by many times. However, an hour was indeed too short. Madam, what do you think we should do? Yang Dingtian asked, how do we get there? Ling Bai said, do you have to ask me about such an important matter? Yang Dingtian said, we came to the taboo continent to cultivate. We can't play any tricks. We have to use the stupidest, and most difficult method. Ling Bai immediately stared at Yang Dingtian. Was he saying that she was stupid? Yang Dingtian said, so, madam, don't think too much. Just tell me the method in your mind. Do you really want me to say it? Ling Bai said. Yes, I really want you to say it. Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai said, I just said that there is magma everywhere, and there is no path, so we will directly create a path. Yang Dingtian was stunned and asked, how do I create it? Ling Bai said, after the magma cools and solidifies, it will turn into hard rocks. Therefore, I directly input ice energy to cool and solidify the magma and create a path. After Yang Dingtian heard this, he was stunned, and then suddenly trembled. The demon vulture king was also stunned, and then it suddenly trembled. Holy shit! This method was really difficult and stupid. In fact, Yang Dingtian had already come up with a bunch of ideas. For example, stabbing the treasured sword into the lava to create a suction force. Then, the mystic fire would spurt out and turn into a primitive rocket, directly flying forward with a whoosh. Or, he could directly use the propulsion of the condensation pill to advance. In short, the magma was terrifying at first, but in reality, it was easier to cross it than the hard rock plains. The only important point was to pay attention to the 10 times anti-gravity, and let the Emperor Grade Soul Sword firmly grasp the sea of magma at all times. However, Yang Dingtian knew deeply that although the destination was the Ice Palace, the bitter cultivation on the way was more important. If he took advantage of the opportunity to go to the Ice Palace, his cultivation would not break through at all. Therefore, he had to use the most difficult and stupid method. And Ling Bai, without a doubt, proposed the stupidest method. Using profound qi to solidify a path in the sea of magma. Fortunately, Yang Dingtian had cultivated the 4th stage of the pig-slaying swordsmanship. Otherwise, it would be impossible to solidify the magma. Claw, do you know ice energy? Yang Dingtian asked. The demon vulture king shook its head desperately, indicating that it didn't. Alright, then you'll be in charge of walking. Yang Dingtian said. The demon vulture king nodded desperately, beaming with joy. Yang Dingtian pulled out the Emperor Grade Soul Sword and stabbed it into the magma. Swoosh! A powerful ice profound qi was injected into the soul sword. However, it was useless. This ice profound qi was like mud sinking into the sea. Yang Dingtian understood. Because the heat of the magma sea was too terrifying, the ice profound qi that Yang Dingtian injected was instantly offset. There was no other way. Yang Dingtian immediately increased the output of the ice profound qi. As expected, it was effective. The magma within a radius of 3 meters began to solidify at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, Yang Dingtian discovered that the ground after solidifying was almost exactly the same as the hard rock plain. What the hell was going on? However, he couldn't care less at this moment. I'm going to remove the energy barrier. Next, you guys have to use your profound qi to resist the heat of the surrounding air. Yang Dingtian said. In any case, as long as they weren't directly touched by the magma, their bodies wouldn't be burned and the energy barrier could be removed. In this way, Yang Dingtian and the others used the stupidest method. They stabbed their swords into the magma and injected their ice profound qi to solidify the magma. They created a path and then walked along this path. Later, Yang Dingtian discovered that a 3-meter road was not reasonable. Thus, he increased his profound qi and directly solidified a road that was more than 10 meters long. Suddenly, the consumption of profound qi was even more astonishing. In this way, Yang Dingtian solidified the magma all the way and created a path in the magma sea. As soon as they set foot on a new solidified road, the road behind them would be melted because the heat here was too shocking. 6 hours later, the 2 humans and 1 beast had traveled 120 li. That's right, this speed was already quite astonishing. Yang Dingtian not only had to solidify the road, but also resist 10 times the anti-gravity and thousands of degrees of high temperature. 3 hours, 120 miles, Yang Dingtian's profound qi had been exhausted. Ah Claw, how long can your profound qi last? Yang Dingtian asked. The demon vulture king stretched out 2 fingers, indicating that its profound qi energy could still last for 4 hours. As expected of a demon beast, it was completely different from a human. If it was a human grandmaster, they would be able to last for 2 hours before their profound qi was exhausted. But the demon vulture king could actually last for 10 hours. Yang Dingtian's mind began to calculate. It would take less than 2 hours for him to recover his profound qi with the Xian gathering pill. However, ordinary devouring of battle profound qi would take about 4 to 6 hours. Yang Dingtian's profound qi, while creating a road, could resist the anti-gravity and heat at the same time. It could last for 6 hours. In the past 6 hours, Ling Bai had been lying on the Demon Vulture King's stomach to rest. Ling Bai was a 9-star Grandmaster. If she were to create a road and advance at the same time, she probably wouldn't be able to last for an hour. Especially creating a road, the consumption of profound qi was too terrifying. Ling Bai couldn't bear it at all. Yang Dingtian climbed onto the Demon Vulture King's stomach, then handed the sword to Ling Bai and said, "Madam, you don't have to do anything next. Continue to lie on Ah Claw's stomach, stab the sword into the magma, and keep injecting profound qi into it. Keep the ground solidified for about 5 feet. When you can't hold on any longer, wake me up." Ling Bai nervously grabbed Yang Dingtian's soul sword that was close to the emperor grade. She kept reciting Yang Dingtian's words and tried her best to memorize them. She really felt a lot of pressure. This was the first time Yang Dingtian had given her such an important task. She memorized it over and over again, extremely nervous. Yang Dingtian asked, "Madam, is there a problem?" I'm afraid I can't do it well." Ling Bai said, "Keep the ground we are standing on solidified for about 5 feet, right? Is it round or square?" Both are fine." Yang Dingtian said, "In fact, with your ability, you can only make it round." "Ah, what?" Ling Bai said. Nothing. Yang Dingtian said, "Stab the sword down and keep the ground solidified for 5 feet. Just let Ah Claw have a place to stand." "Oh, okay. Ling Bai grabbed Yang Dingtian's sword and stabbed it into the ground. She said with a trembling voice, "Why don't you not close your eyes first? See if I do it right, then you can recover your profound qi." Okay. Yang Dingtian said. After Ling Bai stabbed the sword into the magma, she began to count her profound qi and injected it into the ground. This ground was originally solidified by Yang Dingtian and was melting. So, as long as she continued to inject ice-cold profound qi, it would be fine. Well done." Yang Dingtian said, "Then I'll rest." Ling Bai gave Yang Dingtian an extremely unnatural smile, and then carefully maintained the 5 feet of solidified ground. No matter if it was a little more or a little less, she was scared witless and felt as if her entire body was about to collapse. Heavens, she must have been scolded since she was young. To be able to break through to the master stage like this, she was really amazing. Because it was Ling Bai's first time, when Yang Dingtian recovered his profound qi, he could only use the Xian gathering pill. Therefore, in just half an hour, his battle profound qi was filled to the brim. However, he still did not wake up. He wanted to see how long Ling Bai could last. One had to know that she had been lying on the Demon Vulture King's stomach and had been full of profound qi. Now, she was still lying on the Demon Vulture King's stomach and did not need to resist the anti-gravity. Soon, the results were out. Ling Bai did not need to care about anything. She just had to inject profound qi to maintain the solidified ground with a diameter of 5 feet. She could last for 4 hours. Yang Dingtian woke up. Instantly, Ling Bai was on the verge of tears. Her entire face turned pale. You did well." Yang Dingtian said, "Next time, when you solidify the ground, a claw will not be motionless. It will keep walking forward. You need to continuously solidify the ground. Walk as far as you can." "Ah!" Ling Bai screamed, "I'm afraid I can't do it well. I believe in you." Yang Dingtian then took the sword and said, "Now, you should rest and start recovering your profound qi. It will take a long time for me to recover my battle profound qi." Ling Bai said. "Don't worry." Yang Dingtian said. Yang Dingtian held onto the artifact sword and abruptly stabbed it into the ground as he poured in his mystic qi. This ice profound qi was more than 10 times that of Ling Bai. Moreover, Ling Bai could only create a circular solidified ground, which was a huge waste. As for Yang Dingtian, it was completely rectangular, just like a road. Swish! Ice profound chi poured in crazily, and then a dozen meters long hard stone ground was immediately formed. At this time, the Demon Vulture King's profound chi was also exhausted. Ling Bai was lying on its stomach, while Yang Dingtian had to carry the Demon Vulture King on his back and continue forward. This place was 10 times the anti-gravity, so the Demon Vulture King became 50,000 jin again. Thus, Yang Dingtian had to carry 50,000 jin to resist the anti-gravity and the surrounding hot energy. He also had to pour in ice profound chi to solidify the road. Without a doubt, this was probably the most bitter and difficult type of cultivation, known as bitter cultivation. Just like this, Yang Dingtian carried the Demon Vulture King on his back and walked step by step in the endless magma plain. He could only pray that this magma plain wasn't too big, just a few thousand li. If it was tens of thousands of li, then Yang Dingtian would even have the heart to die. 4 hours later, Yang Dingtian's profound chi had been exhausted by nearly 90%, but he had walked a full 130 li. That's right, in the previous 3 hours, without carrying the Demon Vulture King, Yang Dingtian had only walked 120 li. Now, he had directly walked 130 li. It wasn't that his cultivation had become stronger, but that he could use his profound chi more rationally. Now, he had less than 10% of his profound chi left, so he couldn't move forward. At this time, the Demon Vulture King and Ling Bai had not recovered, and it would take at least 6 hours to recover. Thus, Yang Dingtian carried the Demon Vulture King and Ling Bai on his back, closed his eyes, and reduced the amount of ice profound chi output by many times. Suddenly, the solidified ground he had created began to melt. When it melted to only a foot, Yang Dingtian continued to pour in profound chi to maintain this foot of solid ground, so that he could have a foothold. Just like this, he carried the Demon Vulture King on his back and stood on the foot of solid ground, motionless. After more than 2 hours, when Yang Dingtian's profound chi was about to be exhausted, Ling Bai and the Demon Vulture King had completely recovered their profound chi and woke up almost at the same time. Yang Dingtian suddenly poured all of his remaining profound chi into the ground. Suddenly, the ground within a dozen meters of him froze. The Demon Vulture King, Zhao, immediately poured in profound chi, firmly grasped the ground, and slowly moved forward. Yang Dingtian looked tired and handed the sword to Ling Bai. "Madam, it's up to you now. You still don't have to worry about anything. After Zhao walks out 20 feet, you pull out the sword and stab it into the ground 20 feet away. Then, continue to pour in profound chi, understand? 20 feet per stab, right?" Ling Bai was so nervous that tears gushed out. "Yes, 20 feet per stab. The time for each stab is about 10 breaths of time for you," Yang Dingtian said proudly. "Oh, 20 feet per stab, 20 feet per stab, 10 breaths of time for each stab, 10 breaths of time for each stab," Ling Bai recited desperately. 21 stab, 10 breaths of time for each stab. 21 stab, 10 breaths of time for each stab. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian was stunned. Clearly, every 20 feet of sword was stabbed into the ground once, and every time it was stabbed into the ground, it would take 10 breaths of time for each stab. In the end, she recited 21 stab, 10 breaths of time for each stab. Even though Yang Dingtian was extremely tired at this moment, after hearing her words, he couldn't help but be lost in thought. Yang Dingtian patted the Demon Vulture King's neck and said, "Zhao, it's up to you." The Demon Vulture King nodded. That's right, it was indeed up to the Demon Vulture King. Because Ling Bai was very dogmatic, she could only stab 20 feet per stab, and inject ice profound chi for 10 breaths of time for each stab. Therefore, the Demon Vulture King had to fully cooperate with her. All the rhythm had to be controlled by the Demon Vulture King. Once there was a mistake, it would be troublesome. If it was light, it would be burnt. If it was heavy, it would directly fall into the deep space. But young Dingtian had no choice. Who asked the demon vulture king to be the one with the highest intelligence other than young Dingtian? He could only hand the heavy responsibility to it. Sigh. Young Dingtian sighed in his heart. They were all beautiful women, but why was the gap between them so big? When he was with Wu Maji, Yang Dingtian's brain stopped working and he became a silly Guojing. But when he was with Ling Bai in front of him, Yang Dingtian directly changed from Guojing to Zhuge Liang. This span was too big. Ah Zhao, it's all up to you. Yang Dingtian said in his heart. Then, lying on Ah Zhao's stomach, he took another Xian gathering pill and began to recover his profound qi. How many Xian gathering pills did Yang Dingtian bring? There were hundreds of them. He thought it was enough. But now, there weren't many left. At first, because he was anxious, he wasted a lot. Now, there were only a dozen left. Now, he didn't use the spirit jade. He needed the shortest time to recover his profound qi, so he endured the pain and used another one. After only half an hour, Yang Dingtian had recovered his profound qi. But Yang Dingtian still didn't open his eyes. He had to let Ling Bai complete it alone. When it was really dangerous, he would take action. Ling Bai lay on the demon vulture king's stomach and kept chanting, 20 feet, 21 stabs. In fact, Ah Zhao's claws were only about 5 feet. The hard stone ground made by Ling Bai was just enough for it to stand on. And every step it took was exactly 20 feet. Therefore, when the ground was about to melt and the 5 feet of hard road in front was completed, Ah Zhao took another step forward. Each step was 20 feet. This saved Ling Bai the trouble of counting foot by foot. Like this, after half a minute, the demon vulture king was able to move 5 feet forward and then stood still. 10 stabs at a time. Ling Bai stabbed the sword into the magma and injected profound qi. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Ling Bai was afraid that she couldn't hear her own breathing, so she took deep breaths. Moreover, every breath was exactly the same in a very mechanical manner. It was really hard on her. After 10 breaths, the new 5 feet of hard ground was completed. At this moment, the hard stone ground behind was about to melt. Ah Zhao took another step forward. More than 4 hours later, Ling Bai's profound qi was exhausted. Yang Dingtian woke up. In these 4 hours, he had advanced 2 miles. That's right, it was the great 5 miles road. It was faster than a snail. The moment Yang Dingtian woke up, Ling Bai burst into tears and threw herself into Yang Dingtian's arms. She was really going to collapse. She was really going to collapse. After completing such a difficult task, her only belief was that Yang Dingtian would wake up soon. Yang Dingtian would wake up soon. At this moment, her dependence on Yang Dingtian had reached an incomparable level. Just like this, Yang Dingtian led the demon vulture king and Ling Bai. In the sea of magma, they used ice profound qi to create a road and advanced with great difficulty. If the first day was counted as 24 hours, they walked about 200 miles. The second day, they walked 300 miles. The third day, they walked 400 miles. The fourth day, they walked 450 miles. The fifth day, they walked 455 miles. He didn't know how many days had passed, but Yang Dingtian had walked 500 miles. Anyway, he didn't know how many days had passed, but Yang Dingtian's face was already haggard. At 500 miles, it was very difficult to improve. How long had Yang Dingtian been walking? It should have been more than 100 days. In other words, Yang Dingtian had walked another tens of thousands of miles. Wasn't it thousands of miles? When he saw the ice palace in the sky, it was clearly very close. Yang Dingtian thought it was a few hundred miles, but then he thought it was a few thousand miles, and then 10,000 miles. However, he had walked 30,000 miles. Then, he had walked 50,000 miles. Then, he had walked 80,000 miles. Then, he had walked 100,000 miles. There was still no trace of that ice palace. Yang Dingtian once again fell into a state of madness and despair. He already felt that he had taken the wrong path, or that the ice palace was an illusion. But the strange thing was that among the 2 people and 1 beast present, he was the only one who had broken down in despair. Ling Bai didn't feel anything. Anyway, as long as someone took care of her and ordered her, she wasn't worried at all. She didn't care how far she had to go. And the demon vulture king's incomparably thick nerves could already perform a play with himself. Therefore, the only one who was about to break down was Yang Dingtian. How long had Yang Dingtian been walking? How far had he walked? In the hard rock continent, he had only walked less than 100,000 miles. The remaining tens of thousands of miles were all flown by the palace. This even more terrifying flaming plains, he thought it was a few thousand miles, but not more than 10,000 miles. In fact, the 2 people and 1 beast had walked for a full year. More than 300 days, a full 200,000 miles. Yang Dingtian had become a living robot, only walking numbly. Until one day, he looked up. The incomparably huge ice palace was floating in the air. The second trial of the taboo continent, the flaming plains, had been passed. Chapter 682. How long had it been since Yang Dingtian had spoken to Ling Bai and the demon vulture king? He didn't know. Perhaps it had been more than half a year. It was different from the hard rock plains. Although the bitter cultivation in the raging flame plains was more difficult. However, Yang Dingtian was at most completely numb and broke down, but his body no longer had the instinctive reaction of wanting to commit suicide. Perhaps it was because Ling Bai, this stupid woman, needed to be taken care of. Perhaps it was because he had a goal, unlike the hard rock plains, where he had no goal at all. But no matter what, the bitter cultivation in the raging flame plains was much more difficult than he had imagined. If Yang Dingtian knew that he had to walk 200,000 miles and walk for a year, he might really give up at the beginning and choose a much easier method. In this year's time, Yang Dingtian really used the ice profound qi to solidify a path of 200,000 miles. Of course, it was quickly melted by the magma. Less than 1% of these 200,000 miles of road was created by Ling Bai. The remaining 99% was created by Yang Dingtian. Of these 200,000 miles, 100,000 miles were completed by Yang Dingtian carrying the demon vulture king and Ling Bai. Before coming to the taboo continent, Yang Dingtian could not imagine. The cultivation in the taboo continent was actually so stupid and so difficult. But in the end, in a year's time, they finally finished walking 200,000 miles of the raging flame plains. The incomparably arduous journey was finally completed. Of course, if nothing unexpected happened. There was 10 times the anti-gravity here, so the time was also 10 times that of the chaos world. A year here should be a little more than a month in the chaos world. Moreover, the day and night here had changed from 60 hours in the hard rock plains to 120 hours in this year's time, 2 people, 1 beast. Without a doubt, they had become the closest and dearest people. Especially Ling Bai to Yang Dingtian. Although she was old enough to be Yang Dingtian's mother, there was no doubt that mentally, she could only be considered a daughter. Because, without anyone teaching her, she didn't know how to do things. Anything, really anything. She would only do it if Yang Dingtian said it. If Yang Dingtian didn't say it, she wouldn't know what to do. However, she also had her own strengths. That was, as long as it was something Yang Dingtian assigned her, no matter how difficult it was, she would grit her teeth and cry and complete it. It was not good to be dogmatic, but she was becoming more and more dogmatic. Therefore, it was difficult for Yang Dingtian to treat her as an elderly lady now. In fact, in terms of appearance, Yang Dingtian looked 10 years older than her. She had enough pills. Either Yang Dingtian or the demon vulture king would help her resist the heat. Therefore, in the past year, Yang Dingtian had lost 20 kilograms, and the demon vulture king had lost more than 500 kilograms. Yang Dingtian couldn't believe that this woman had gained so much weight. She had actually regained the weight she had lost in the hard rock plain. Moreover, she had gone from looking like she was 32 years old to looking like she was 28 years old. Moreover, Yang Dingtian finally knew why she was able to break through to the master stage despite her stupidity. First of all, her Xian vein talent wasn't low. Secondly, in the Vulture Palace, she was completely obedient to orders on how to cultivate. Like a robot, she completed the cultivation tasks assigned by Walingzi and Ling Chuzi one by one. Just like that, she broke through to the 6-star master stage at her current age. Then, she broke through to the 9-star master stage in the hard rock plain. Madam, I have a question that I've wanted to ask for a long time. After seeing the ice palace, Yang Dingtian's heart seemed to have come alive again. Go ahead, Ling Bai said. When we first came to the taboo continent, it was 5 times the anti-gravity. With your brain, how could you walk thousands of miles? How could you last for more than a month? Yang Dingtian asked. In Yang Dingtian's heart, with Ling Bai's brain, it was a miracle that she knew how to land on the taboo continent and didn't fall into the deep space immediately. In the beginning, it was the black vulture that tied my body and walked forward. I didn't even need to get off the ground. Ling Bai said. Later, the black vulture died. It told me how much profound qi to use to walk and how much profound qi to use to grab the ground. When there was still 10% of profound qi left, I stabbed the sword into the ground and tied myself to the sword with a rope. Then, I began to recover my profound qi. I ate a pill during the day and another at night. That's how I persevered. Later on, when I finished eating the pills, I couldn't wake up anymore. Immediately, Yang Dingtian was shocked by that black vulture. It was a sky vulture. Humph. Before Yang Dingtian could exclaim in admiration, the devil vulture king had already snorted in disdain. In its eyes, this was nothing. It knew how to do it too. Yang Dingtian patted the devil vulture king and said, "Ah Claw, don't be unconvinced. It's not difficult for you to understand these things, but you still have to teach Ling Bai without making any mistakes. Can you do it?" The devil vulture king's eyes were confused as it fell into a fantasy. Then, its entire body trembled as goosebumps appeared. It shook its head desperately, indicating that it couldn't do it. Ling Bai sighed and said, "Actually, after my black vulture died, I didn't want to live anymore. I raised it since it was young, and it was the only black vulture that didn't eat human flesh. It was very smart. It could understand everything I said. I could also understand what it said." Yang Dingtian's tears were about to fall. It was really a divine vulture from the heavens. It could understand Ling Bai's words, but at that time, Ling Bai could understand its words. God knows how much effort the black vulture had put in. Previously, the devil vulture king and Yang Dingtian's communication was very limited, but now, they could communicate without any obstacles. The devil vulture king didn't know how to speak, but a casual expression, a look, a claw, Yang Dingtian could understand it. It wasn't easy, because for more than a year, one man and one beast had been together day and night. As for the black vulture and Ling Bai, it was even more difficult. They had been together day and night for 20 years. "Madam, is your black vulture male or female?" Yang Dingtian asked. Suddenly, the devil vulture king's ears stood up. "Female," Ling Bai said. "Sigh, what a pity. Otherwise, it would be great to be Ah Zhua's wife," Yang Dingtian said. The devil vulture king, Ah Zhua, was also a little dejected and agreed. Now, it was also somewhat fascinated by that magical black vulture. It was an intelligent devil vulture. It had already transcended vulgar interests, so its requirements for its spouse were naturally higher. At the very least, they should have a common language, right? It was a pity that the black vulture was dead. Sigh. The devil vulture king sighed. It already felt that it might be alone for the rest of its life. Ah joie, Madame Ling Bai really needs someone to take care of her. Her black vulture is dead. Why don't you take care of her in the future? You can be her mount. Yang Dingtian said. The devil vulture king, Ah joie, stared at Yang Dingtian with a blank face. What are you talking about? I'm a devil vulture, I don't understand human language. Playing dumb again. Yang Dingtian said, you are now proficient in English, Chinese, and chaos language. Don't pretend that you don't understand human language. What does fuck mean? The devil vulture king raised a claw and raised its middle claw. However, it was a pity that it only had 4 claws and did not have a real middle finger. Kiss, what do you mean? Yang Dingtian said. Bo. The devil vulture king pouted and kissed the air fiercely. Fly, what do you mean? Yang Dingtian said. Ugh. Ah joie immediately lowered its head dejectedly. It couldn't fly in this place, so how could it fly? At this moment, Ling Bai suddenly glared fiercely at Yang Dingtian and said, don't say dirty words, you are teaching Ah joie bad things. Yang Dingtian was stunned. Dirty words? What dirty words? Then, he quickly reacted. Ling Bai's dirty words were referring to the word fuck. Fuck. Sister, your IQ and reaction arc are really despairing. I said fuck a minute ago, why did you only remember it now? I finished the 3rd word and you only remembered the meaning of the 1st word. This, ah joie, why don't you reconsider what I said just now? Yang Dingtian joked about the devil vulture king's gift to Ling Bai. The devil vulture king immediately put on an ignorant expression, indicating that it didn't understand what Yang Dingtian was talking about. Ah joie, don't copy my expression. Suddenly, Ling Bai said. Yang Dingtian suddenly realized why Ah joie's expression was so familiar every time it pretended to be stupid. Yang Dingtian was already a little worried that he would become the 2nd IQ of the 3. The last 2,000 miles were very comfortable. It was completely bragging all the way. Soon, 2 people and 1 beast stood under the incomparably huge ice and snow palace. The huge ice and snow palace floated in the air 300 meters above the ground. It was still upside down, with the roof facing down. Ah joie, wrap your body. Yang Dingtian said. Immediately, Ah joie's entire body shrank into a ball. Yang Dingtian raised Ah joie and threw it towards the door of the ice and snow palace. Whoosh! The devil vulture king, who had shrunk into a ball, was thrown into the ice and snow palace like a cannonball. Yang Dingtian said to Ling Bai, Madam, it's your turn. Ling Bai hesitated for a moment, gritted her teeth, bent down, hugged her legs, and copied Ah joie, trying to shrink herself into a ball, trying to become a circle. However, she couldn't do it. Yang Dingtian looked at her in despair. Madam, you're small and can be easily thrown into the door by me. You don't have to copy Ah joie. Yang Dingtian said, besides, as an elder, how can you make this posture? Is it appropriate for me to let my imagination run wild? Ling Bai stood up with a red face. Yang Dingtian grabbed her waist and threw her into the ice and snow palace in the sky, saying, Ah claw, catch. Ah. Ling Bai let out a delicate cry and flew out directly. The devil vulture king, which even had an English name, stretched out its head like lightning and grabbed Ling Bai with its mouth. Yang Dingtian flicked it lightly and jumped into the ice and snow palace a few hundred meters above. After entering the ice and snow palace, the 2 people and 1 beast didn't cultivate. They just lay on the ground and slept soundly. They hadn't slept for a whole year. Ling Bai had slept, but Yang Dingtian and Ah joie hadn't slept for a minute. Even at this time, the shrewd Ah joie had learned to sleep on its side with its body bent, so that Yang Dingtian and Ling Bai wouldn't lie on its belly. It was so comfortable. He hadn't laid down so comfortably for a whole year. Soon, young Dingtian fell asleep. As he slept, young Dingtian felt a soft body suddenly appear in his arms. When he opened his eyes, Lingbai had unknowingly curled up in his arms and fallen asleep. The raging flame continent was incomparably hot. And this ice and snow palace was incomparably cold. Lingbai also had yin xian veins. At first, she didn't feel it, but as she slept, she felt very cold. And Yang Dingtian had the awesome 9 yang xian veins, so he couldn't feel the cold at all. Thus, in Lingbai's sleep, she naturally hid in Yang Dingtian's arms. However, this wasn't appropriate. She was an elder after all. A few hours later, Yang Dingtian patted the demon vulture king and Lingbai's necks, waking them up. All right, stop sleeping. Get up and cultivate. Yang Dingtian said. Then, he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes and began to cultivate. He began to open the entrance of his xian veins and began to absorb the xian qi. Wow! After a year, that familiar feeling came again. The seemingly endless profound qi energy was like a ferocious tide, crazily rushing in. And the xian veins and qi sea that had been dry for a whole year instantly received the craziest nourishment. Yang Dingtian was really curious. The bitter cultivation in the raging flame plains was many times more difficult than the hard rock plains. Then, how much could he break through? Chapter 683. The celestial qi was still extremely rich. Yang Dingtian once again felt this extremely comfortable feeling. Then, he began to perceive his sea of qi. He clearly felt that the entire sea of qi had expanded, but he really didn't know how many times his sea of qi had expanded. In short, the bitter cultivation in the raging flame plains was much more difficult than the hard rock plains. After walking for a full year, he used his celestial qi to create a road of more than 200,000 miles and walk through the magma ocean of more than 200,000 miles. Although his sea of qi had expanded a lot, after 8 hours, Yang Dingtian's sea of qi was still quickly filled up. Then, there was a familiar feeling of expansion. And this expanding force was extremely powerful. It had expanded to the extreme. Boom! Almost easily, Yang Dingtian's body and consciousness fell into nothingness. Yang Dingtian successfully broke through to the 3-star Great Grandmaster. Yang Dingtian gradually recovered his divine senses after being in the void for a full 7 minutes. Then, the endless celestial qi once again surged in, crazily irrigating Yang Dingtian's sea of qi. 10 hours later, Yang Dingtian's sea of qi was once again filled up, and he felt it expand again. Boom! As expected, his sea of qi exploded, and his body fell into nothingness. Yang Dingtian's cultivation once again broke through to the 4-star Great Grandmaster. In the end, Yang Dingtian's cultivation stopped at the 4-star 5th-class Great Grandmaster, and his sea of qi stopped trembling. Yang Dingtian's breakthrough this time stopped. When he opened his eyes, Lingbai and the demon vulture king had already stopped cultivating. Yang Dingtian glanced at the demon vulture king, and it directly stretched out 5 claws to Yang Dingtian, shaking its head and wagging its tail in excitement. Level 8 5-star monster beast. It was equivalent to a 5-star Great Grandmaster. However, a 5-star Great Grandmaster of monster beasts was incredible. Ah Claw was the first one in 100 years to reach grade 8, 5 stars on his mount. Even a powerful combat monster beast would need at least 100 years to reach its energy level. In any case, there was only one feeling in its heart. My Ah Claw is going to be rich. Yang Dingtian looked towards Lingbai and said, Madam, how are you? Lingbai said, It seems to be the same as you. You failed to break through to the Great Grandmaster realm, but your sea of qi is very empty. Understood. Yang Dingtian said, You lack the external power of heaven and earth, so forcefully open your profound veins and energy sea. Yang Dingtian took out another rope and tied it around Ling Bai's waist. Ling Bai was startled as she said, What do you want to do? I'll strike you with lightning and forcefully push you to the Grand Master level, Yang Dingtian said. Ah! Ling Bai fell into deep thought. Very soon, a fearful expression appeared on her face. She said, I don't want to break through to the Great Grand Master level. Is that okay? Yang Dingtian, are you worried about your life? Don't worry. Last time, I clearly felt that although my mystic flame lightning was very powerful, most of the energy would be used to forcefully open your profound veins and energy sea. At this time, your energy sea would seem to have a black hole that would devour all the energy. It won't harm your body. Following that, Yang Dingtian said, besides, I see that you're not afraid of death. Ling Bai said embarrassedly, I am not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of pain. Don't worry, it won't hurt. Yang Dingtian said, coincidentally, I can also use you as an experiment to see if I can force Song Shao and Yun Kailan to break through to the Great Grandmaster realm in the future. Yang Dingtian's words were very direct. However, it didn't matter if he was direct in front of Ling Bai. She wouldn't think too much about it. After firmly tying the rope around Ling Bai's waist, Yang Dingtian coaxed and lied to her. Like flying a kite, he pushed her out of the hall and floated in the air. Ling Bai was so nervous that her entire body was trembling. Her small face was pale, and she kept saying, Don't, I don't want to break through to the Great Grandmaster realm. Don't worry, it won't hurt. Yang Dingtian said. Then, he tied the other end of the rope to the ice and snow hall. Are you ready? Yang Dingtian looked at Ling Bai, who was floating in the air. Ling Bai shook her head desperately and almost cried out, Yang Dingtian, put me down. I really don't want it anymore. I beg you to put me down. Close your eyes, Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai closed her eyes while trembling all over. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian summoned the million spirit demon fire with his left hand. Then, he inserted less than 1/10 of his mystic chi into the million spirit demon fire. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian summoned the demon spirit demon fire with his right hand. Then, he inserted less than 1/10 of his mystic chi into the demon spirit demon fire. Then, both of his hands flicked gently. Whoosh! Instantly, the two chaotic mystic flames flew into the sky above Ling Bai's head. Then, the two mystic flames collided fiercely in the air. Pa! Another huge lightning bolt that was over 1,000 meters long and 10 meters thick struck Ling Bai's head fiercely. Suddenly, an extremely bright ray of light that was many times brighter than the sun suddenly burst out. As for Ling Bai, a terrifying flame burst out from her delicate body and completely engulfed her entire delicate body. Ah! Ling Bai screamed and cried loudly. Then, all of the sounds came to an abrupt end. Her entire person, her entire voice, and her entire consciousness were completely engulfed by the light of the lightning. This looked very dangerous, but in fact, Yang Dingtian was already quite confident that it was not too dangerous to her life. Moreover, in order to be safe, Yang Dingtian only used 1/3 of the mystic flame lightning on Ling Bai's body. All of the light gradually faded. Ling Bai was indeed safe and sound. However, all of her hair was standing up one by one. Her clothes were also somewhat messy and tattered. Other than that, there were no other traces. However, Ling Bai was obviously scared out of her wits. Her entire face was pale without any color, and her two eyes were completely out of focus. Madam, how are you feeling? Yang Dingtian asked. Ling Bai slowly came back to her senses. Then, with a cry, she suddenly burst into tears. Yang Dingtian said, Madam, don't just cry. How are you feeling? Have you broken through? Ling Bai shook her head vigorously and said, I don't want to break through, I don't want to break through. Put me down, put me down. Yang Dingtian sighed in his heart. It seemed that the energy was still not enough to forcefully open her Qi and mystic meridians. Therefore, Yang Dingtian summoned the Million Spirit Demon Fire and Demon Spirit Demon Fire of the chaotic attribute. The amount of mystic Qi energy that he injected was slightly more than half. When Ling Bai saw this, she was instantly scared out of her wits. Her entire delicate body curled up as she wailed, "No, please don't. I don't want to break through. Yang Dingtian, put me down, okay?" She did not know how to struggle. She only knew how to beg desperately. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian's two mystic flames directly flew out and then fiercely collided in the air. Pa! A lightning bolt that was 2,000 meters long and dozens of meters thick suddenly struck down. Ah! Ling Bai screamed. Then, her entire delicate body was completely engulfed by the snow-white lightning light. Her entire consciousness instantly sank into nothingness. After a full 15 minutes, that dazzling light gradually dissipated. Yang Dingtian saw that Ling Bai's delicate body was charred black. Instantly, Yang Dingtian was greatly shocked. He immediately pulled the rope and pulled Ling Bai into the ice palace. Then, he immediately wiped her face. Instantly, her snow-white skin was restored. Yang Dingtian directly dug out a large piece of ice from the ice palace. He used the mystic flames to melt it into hot water and splashed it on Ling Bai's body. Instantly, the charred black on her body was washed away, revealing her fair and plump body. Her clothes were all burned off, but her body was fine. There were almost no scars left. Only a bright red lightning mark was left on her snow-white back. However, Yang Dingtian's space ring really did not have any clothes left. Ningning's clothes were the last set of women's clothing. What was left was Yang Dingtian's men's clothing. However, men's clothing was better than nothing. Yang Dingtian took out his men's clothing and changed Ling Bai into it. After a full 15 minutes, Ling Bai finally woke up and opened her eyes. Her first reaction when she woke up was not to cry. Instead, her entire delicate body kept trembling. Her upper and lower teeth kept knocking against each other. Even her lips were constantly trembling. "Are you all right? You should have broken through by now. You should use mystic qi inhalation and exhalation," Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai's tears suddenly gushed out. She shouted at Yang Dingtian, "What right do you have? What right do you have? I don't want to break through. I'm scared. What right do you have to make the decision for me? What right do you have to not care about my opinion and tie me up? What right do you have to let me break through? Could it be that I can only obey others for the rest of my life? When I was young, I had to obey my parents' orders. When I grew up, I had to obey that old bastard's orders. After that, I had to obey my husband's orders. In the end, even Vulture could order me around. Now, I have to obey your orders. What right do you have? What right do you have?" After Ling Bai shouted, she hugged her knees and cried loudly. Yang Dingtian was stunned and then fell into deep thought. Indeed. Over the past year, Ling Bai had become more and more submissive to him. She completely obeyed any of his orders unconditionally. Every word he said, every order, even if it was difficult, she would grit her teeth and complete it. Therefore, Yang Dingtian did not consider her wishes when he used the mystic fire lightning to make her break through to the great Grandmaster realm. He had no qualms about tying her up and striking her down with lightning bolts. He really did not have the right to do so. Taking a deep breath, Yang Dingtian gently patted her shoulder and said, "Madam, I'm sorry." Ling Bai ignored him and still hugged her head and cried bitterly. "Don't cry," Yang Dingtian said. "Can you not worry about me first and let me be alone?" Ling Bai said. "Okay." Yang Dingtian said, "Then I'm going to sleep. Don't cry for too long." Then, Yang Dingtian walked to the other side and lay down beside the demon vulture king's belly to sleep. Originally, the demon vulture king had been eavesdropping. When he heard young Dingtian coming over, he immediately closed his eyes and even snored. This Claw's acting was getting more and more exaggerated. Yang Dingtian fell asleep as soon as he said so. Claw listened to Ling Bai's crying and fell asleep as well. Ling Bai kept crying for a full 4 hours. The more she thought about it, the sadder she became. So, she cried until she was dizzy and sad. Then, she also fell asleep. That's right. She cried until she fell asleep and forgot to breathe. Indeed, as she said, she did not want to break through to the great Grandmaster realm at all. She felt that it was useless to learn martial arts. She had never killed or beaten anyone since she was young. The only time she wanted to kill someone was because Yang Dingtian had crippled Lingxi. She wished she could go to Yang Dingtian and fight him to the death. However, this kind of fire in her heart was extinguished in just a few hours. She had always resigned herself to adversity. She did not intend to fight or kill. What was the use of breaking through to the great Grandmaster realm? Then, in the Ice Palace, 2 people and 1 beast began to sleep again. At this time, in the sky outside, the peerless Dongfang Bingling, or Princess Mudan, once again descended from the sky and floated outside the Ice Palace. She continued to stare at Yang Dingtian inside. Then, another figure appeared and floated beside Dongfang Bingling. This was a man with a tall and slender body. He wore a snow-white mask on his face, only revealing 2 deep blue eyes like the ocean. The person inside is Yang Dingtian? The man asked. His chaotic language was not very fluent. Yes. Bingling said. Do you think he can find out? The man asked. I don't know. Bingling said. If he can't find out, he will be trapped in the taboo continent forever. The man said lightly, don't you plan to go in and remind him? Chapter 684. If he can't find out, he will be trapped in the taboo continent forever. The man said lightly, don't you want to go in and remind him? Dongfang Bingling still stared at Yang Dingtian's face and did not respond. Princess Mudan, why did you come to visit my little western paradise? The masked man asked. One is for an alliance, and the other is for the void-splitting fire. Dongfang Bingling said. The void-splitting fire, the second arcane fire in the world. Alliance? The masked man laughed. You know, my little western paradise and the chaotic world have always minded their own business. Moreover, why should we, the dragon bloodline, form an alliance with a mere human? Little western paradise's time. An isolated and independent world. 5,000 years ago, the fallen silver dragon seduced some monsters, including the mystic-tailed fox. They planned to replicate the miracle of Naga and breed a demigod race again. Even though none of the races in the Little Western Paradise had succeeded, and none of them had succeeded in giving birth to a race of gods. However, because of the fallen silver dragon's blood, the races in Little Western Paradise were much stronger than humans. Even if they had not bred a demigod race, it did not prevent them from thinking of themselves as the future god race. They were completely dismissive of humans. Because they had the dragon bloodline flowing in their bodies. Many years ago, the Little Western Paradise had sent many female demons into the human world in an attempt to find suitable humans to mate with and give birth to the demigod race. Enchanting was one of them. The masked man said lightly, besides, the enemy of your evil ways is this Yang Dingtian in front of us. Do you still need to form an alliance with Little Western Paradise to deal with him? I will feel ashamed. The alliance is not to deal with the Tiando League, nor to deal with Yang Dingtian. It is to deal with our common enemy, the god of chaos. Dongfang Bingling slowly said, I'm here to visit Little Western Paradise under the order of His Majesty the Demon King to discuss an alliance. The masked man narrowed his charming eyes and shook his head. I'm sorry, Princess Mudan. Our Little Western Paradise doesn't need to form an alliance with anyone. even the evil ways aren't qualified to form an alliance with us. Dongfang Bingling said, my Demon King's soul clone has already obtained the Netherworld Ghost Flame and has become the master of the Netherworld Ghost Land. He has 10 billion undead, among them are over 100 saint level and over 1,000 half-saint level. The masked brave's gaze immediately fell on Dongfang Bingling's beautiful face and said, in that case, you have some qualifications. Then, the masked man smiled and said, however, you want to form an alliance and also want the second mysterious flame in the world, the void-splitting flame. Don't you think it's too greedy? Dongfang Bingling said, the void-splitting flame is an ownerless item. These two things don't go against each other. The masked man said, it is indeed an ownerless item. However, the ancestor of our race in Little Western Paradise is the Void's Silver Dragon, the overlord of the Void World. Therefore, it's only right for us to inherit the void-splitting flame. It can't be said that it's an ownerless item. Dongfang Bingling smiled and said, but for us, the void-splitting flame seems to be a must. Impossible. The masked man said, you want to form an alliance with Little Western Paradise and fight for the void-splitting flame. It's not that easy. If Princess Mudan has such thoughts, I think there's no need for you to visit Little Western Paradise. I can reject you right now. Dongfang Bingling looked at the masked man and said, visit, we must visit. At this moment, Yang Dingtian turned over in the ice palace. The masked man said, Princess Mudan, are you really not going to give Yang Dingtian a hint? You've stayed in the taboo continent for a few decades, which is equivalent to 2 years in the chaotic world. This Yang Dingtian's talent is far inferior to yours. I'm afraid he'll be trapped in there for the rest of his life until he dies. Dongfang Bingling shook her head gently and said, if that's the case, then he's not qualified to be a whetstone for evil ways. Then, she sighed softly and said, let's go. Whether he lives or dies will depend on his luck. Your Excellency Yao Li, please lead me to the Western Paradise. Then, please. The masked man said. Then, the two of them disappeared into the starry sky. Ling Bai cried until she fell asleep. When she woke up again, she finally began to absorb the mystical energy. Then, she broke through to the Great Grandmaster realm. However, she merely broke through to the Great Grandmaster realm. To be precise, she was a 1-star 3rd-grade Great Grandmaster. Next, Yang Dingtian kept sleeping and had no intention of leaving the Ice Palace. Ling Bai also ignored Yang Dingtian all the way until the Ice Palace began to fly. Then, she nudged Yang Dingtian. Oh, to be precise, when the taboo continent began to move rapidly again. Just like when they finished cultivating in the hard rock plains, the entire taboo continent began to move rapidly again, moving at a speed of about 2,000 miles per hour. However, this time, they quickly passed the raging flame plains. After about 10 hours, a total of 20,000 miles, the Ice Palace left the raging flame plains and entered the void world again. Below, it was a stretch of nothingness. There were only balls of strange colored light and shadows, as well as lightning that constantly struck. Yang Dingtian now knew that this void world would be very, very long. They would need to fly for at least 50 hours. In other words, this void world was at least 200,000 miles long. It was exactly the same length as the hard rock plains and the raging sun plains. Yang Dingtian had slept enough and was tired of the void world below. He closed his eyes and studied the code of the pig-slaying swordsmanship. At this moment, Ling Bai suddenly said, Yang Dingtian, what do you think the next world will be like? If it's not ice, then it'll be water. Yang Dingtian said, Madam, didn't you plan to ignore me? Ling Bai had ignored Yang Dingtian for more than 40 hours. She didn't speak to him at all. Now, she finally couldn't hold it in. After hearing Yang Dingtian's words, Ling Bai blushed and said, how long until your duel with Wu Yuming? Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, I'm not sure, but according to the time in the chaotic continent, there should be more than a month. Ling Bai said, then, have you thought of any way to get out? Leave the taboo continent and return to the chaotic world. Yang Dingtian said, I don't plan to go out until I become a 6-star or 7-star Great Grandmaster. I have to be at least a 6-star Great Grandmaster to barely be able to fight with Wu Yuming. I think that even if you become a 7-star Great Grandmaster, you won't be a match for Wu Yuming. Ling Bai said, you'll still die in his hands. Yang Dingtian glared at her and said, thank you for being so direct. Ling Bai said, after the cultivation on the next continent is over, you will leave this place, right? Yang Dingtian said, I think so. According to the time, after the third stage, no matter what his cultivation level was, he would have to leave the taboo continent. Then, do you know how to leave? Ling Bai asked. Yang Dingtian was stunned and then shook his head. He really didn't know how to leave this place. Do you think there will be an exit at the end of the continent in the next stage? Ling Bai asked. Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, I don't think so. Why? Ling Bai asked. Because I think there are far more than 3 continents. Perhaps there are 5, 10, or even 100 continents. Each continent is hundreds of thousands of miles long. Yang Dingtian said. How is that possible? Ling Bai said, each continent is hundreds of thousands of miles long. There are a total of 100 continents like this. How can the chaotic world be so big? Yang Dingtian sighed and said, time and space don't mean much in the taboo continent. Although I don't completely understand, the taboo continent is undoubtedly very strange. After the magma of the raging flame plains solidifies, it is exactly the same as the ground of the hard rock plains. Moreover, the size of the 2 continents is exactly the same, so I suspect. Suspect what? Ling Bai asked. I suspect that the hard rock plains and the raging flame plains are the same continent. It's just that they are in different space-time. At this moment, when we are flying quickly on the palace, it looks like the taboo continent is moving, but in fact, space-time is flowing quickly. It's not the continent that's moving, but time, Yang Dingtian said. Immediately, Ling Bai's beautiful eyes widened in shock. It's creepy, isn't it? Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai shook her head and said, I don't know what you're talking about. Yang Dingtian sighed and said, let's wait and see. The 3rd level continent should still be hundreds of thousands of miles long. It's either an endless glacier or an endless ocean. There's still no life, no movement, no wind. The entire continent is dead silent. Really? Ling Bai said. Really? Yang Dingtian said, why don't we make a bet? Ling Bai said, no. If you say it's true, then it's definitely true. After that, it was still a boring and lonely flight. Below the palace was a boundless void world. King Demon Vulture, who was already tired of the void world, heard Yang Dingtian say that it wasn't the continent that was moving below, but space-time. Immediately, it felt very high and mighty. It had a feeling that it didn't understand, so it stuck its head out and carefully studied the void world below. Whether it was space-time moving or the taboo continent moving, in short, more than 50 hours later, the seemingly boundless void world ended. Yang Dingtian's flying palace entered the 3rd continent of the taboo continent. The mystery was revealed. Yang Dingtian was half right and half wrong. That's right, the 3rd continent was all water. At a glance, it was a boundless ocean. But it was definitely not silent. It was completely earth-shattering. On the boundless sea, monstrous waves were set off at all times. It was really a monstrous wave. Have you ever seen a wave that was tens of thousands of meters high? It was everywhere here. The entire sky seemed to have been torn apart, and heavy rain poured down crazily. The dark clouds in the sky condensed into clusters. Pa 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 pa, streaks of shocking lightning struck down crazily. Yang Dingtian decided that after the 3rd level continent's bitter cultivation ended, he would immediately leave the taboo continent and return to the chaos world. However, how should he pass the 3rd level in front of him? Even if he was unwilling, Yang Dingtian's ice palace still flew into the third level's endless ocean. Yang Dingtian immediately raised the soul sword in his hand. That's right, the gravity here had become 20 times. Moreover, it was still anti-gravity. Yang Dingtian was really astonished. This really shouldn't be. If it was anti-gravity, the heavy rain should fly up. But in fact, the heavy rain here was still falling from the sky. If it was 20 times gravity, this ocean would not exist at all. The endless seawater would all pour into the deep space. This was very, very inconsistent with the laws of science. However, the reality that Yang Dingtian saw was like this. The endless ocean was full of raging waves. The terrifying waves were tens of thousands of meters high. Everywhere in the sky, it was pouring rain. Incomparably terrifying lightning struck down crazily. Each of these lightning bolts surpassed Yang Dingtian's mystic fire lightning. And each huge wave, under 20 times gravity, could set off a few million gene or tens of millions of gene of power at any time. The third level continent was originally the last level that Yang Dingtian decided to pass. As long as he passed it, he would immediately leave and return to the chaos world. However, this third level continent really scared Yang Dingtian. This level was many times more difficult than the first and second level combined. In fact, Yang Dingtian could not think of a way to pass it. It seemed like there was really nothing he could do in this round. Chapter 685. Madam, your mission is here again. How should we cross the vast sea in front of us? Yang Dingtian asked. Swim over. Ling Bai said. Swim over? Yang Dingtian said in astonishment, but it's a full 200,000 miles, and 20 times anti-gravity. Any random huge wave will have the power of millions or tens of millions of kilograms. It will directly throw you into the air and fall into the infinite deep space. Pa! At this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck down, ruthlessly hitting the ice palace. Instantly, the huge ice palace suddenly burst from the middle. Use your Xian Qi energy to rebound and jump into the sea. Yang Dingtian ordered. Then, he pulled Ling Bai with one hand and the demon vulture king with the other. Borrowing the ice palace, he suddenly jumped into the vast sea. One must know that there was 20 times anti-gravity here. If one wanted to jump into the sea, at least a few 100,000 kilograms of strength would be needed to counteract the anti-gravity effect and enter the sea. The ice palace couldn't withstand the weight of a few 100,000 kilograms and was instantly smashed into pieces. However, after the ice palace was smashed into pieces, it actually didn't fall into the sea, nor did it fall into the sky. It actually shattered in the air, melted into countless water vapor, and then disappeared. In other words, it directly turned into ashes. Bang! 2 people and 1 beast jumped into the sea. Subsequently, an incomparably enormous force pushed violently, nearly sending Yang Dingtian, the woman, and the beast flying into the deep sky. 20 times anti-gravity, plus the buoyancy of the sea. Fortunately, the buoyancy of the sea wasn't 20 times. Otherwise, if it suddenly became 40 times, Yang Dingtian and 1 beast would have to resist a few 100,000 kilograms of strength. Ling Bai was right, they really had to swim over. In fact, swimming over was the only way. This third continent was vast and boundless, it was all sea. If they didn't swim over, was there any other way? Therefore, the next thing to solve was the problem of how to swim over. Yang Dingtian said, I'll go first. Claw, use your claws to hold Madame Ling Bai. Claw did as he was told and grabbed Ling Bai directly. Then, Yang Dingtian grabbed the demon vulture king's claw, and his Xian Qi surged out to resist the power of 20 times the anti-gravity and the buoyancy of the seawater. In total, the energy that Yang Dingtian had to pay at all times was about 150,000. And it was far more than that. This was only enough to keep them motionless in the middle of the sea. Of course, it was impossible to keep them motionless, because the raging waves in the distance would create a powerful thrust that would push Yang Dingtian and the others back and forth. Therefore, in order to move forward, Yang Dingtian still had to use the propulsion of the profound Qi Hell wave. Therefore, on average, Yang Dingtian had to exert at least 200,000 jin of strength. Just like that, Yang Dingtian's qi surged out, resisting the 200,000 kilograms of force. He carried the demon vulture king and Ling Bai and swam forward. The heavy rain continued to fall from the sky. The huge lightning bolts in the sky were still crazily striking. Now, Yang Dingtian was a 4-star great grandmaster. In such a difficult environment, he actually swam 30 miles in 2 hours. Moreover, the consumption of qi in 2 hours was only 1/5. In other words, Yang Dingtian could swim for 10 hours, more than 100 miles, with his full qi. In the 4th hour, Yang Dingtian swam 50 miles. In the 6th hour, Yang Dingtian swam 80 miles. Suddenly, he was ecstatic. According to this speed, even if Yang Dingtian was the only one in charge of swimming, he would only need around 2,000 hours to travel 200,000 miles. It would only take a mere 100 days. Including the time needed to recover his mystic qi, it would only take less than 200 days. And here, the gravity was 20 times, which meant that the time was 20 times. 200 days was equivalent to 10 days in the chaotic world. Yang Dingtian was pleasantly surprised. However, at this moment, boom! Suddenly, there was a loud noise. Then, a huge wave of a few hundred meters suddenly surged in front of them, directly attacking Yang Dingtian and the others. If it was a wave crashing down, Yang Dingtian would not be afraid. Instead, they would be directly slapped into the sea. But when the wave came, it was too shocking. Because that would produce an incomparably huge thrust, directly pushing Yang Dingtian into the deep space. Without any support, Yang Dingtian and the beast could only fall into the endless deep space. That huge wave of 100 meters was getting higher and higher, closer and closer to Yang Dingtian. Boom! In an instant, that huge wave of a few hundred meters suddenly surged up from Yang Dingtian. A force of at least 1,000,000 pounds suddenly pushed Yang Dingtian and the beast into the deep space. Yang Dingtian was shocked and let out a loud roar. The qi all over his body surged out, and suddenly burst out with a force of more than 1,000,000 pounds, madly resisting the thrust of this huge wave. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian and the beast were pushed to the top of the wave of a few hundred meters. He desperately wanted to fall, and the huge wave desperately wanted to push him up. Boom! The huge wave suddenly fell. Yang Dingtian also fell into the bottom of the sea. At this time, Yang Dingtian's whole body was about to twitch. That kind of shock was almost enough to make people faint. Just a little bit more, and he would be completely thrown into the deep space, never to be reincarnated. And Yang Dingtian originally had nearly 40% of his qi, but now it would be completely exhausted. Yang Dingtian stopped swimming. He could not go on like this, absolutely could not go on like this. It was impossible to reach the end by swimming like this. The only possibility was to be thrown into the endless deep space. This huge wave was only a few hundred meters high, and there were still huge waves of thousands and tens of thousands of meters. At that time, the thrust would be more than tens of millions of pounds. With Yang Dingtian's cultivation, he could only resist the force of 1,000,000 pounds at most. It was impossible to resist the force of 1,000,000 pounds. A person's cultivation could reach the half-saint, or even the saint level. But in terms of pure strength, it was far from being comparable to a demon beast. Just like Yang Dingtian at this time, in terms of cultivation level, was much stronger than the demon vulture king Aja. However, in terms of pure strength, Yang Dingtian might not be as strong as Aja. He had to find a way to resist the thrust of the huge wave, millions, tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of pounds of thrust. Brute force would not work. Even if 100 Yang Dingtian's strength were added together, they might not be able to resist a huge wave of tens of thousands of meters. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Yang Dingtian was burning with anxiety. His brain was desperately turning. However, he could not think of a way. He desperately patted his head with his hand. Yang Dingtian hated that he did not have Moji's brain at this time. If it were her, she would definitely have a way in the blink of an eye. He had almost exhausted all his brain power. He even wanted to ask Queen Poisa in his mind. Later, he gave up. Although Queen Poisa's cultivation was once extremely powerful, this woman was very artistic. Her talent in this area was probably average. Rumble. At this time, Yang Dingtian heard another loud noise. This time, it was an earth-shattering noise. The surrounding sea area was trembling violently. Yang Dingtian looked up. Fuck, in front of him, a huge wave of thousands of meters was surging up. Soon, it would reach Yang Dingtian's side. Escape or hide? That was impossible. The speed of this huge wave was hundreds of miles per hour. Moreover, it was also a wave, which meant that there would be millions or tens of millions of pounds of thrust. In less than half a minute, it would suddenly push Yang Dingtian and the beast into the endless deep space. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Yang Dingtian's brain was about to split open. He was so nervous that he was about to twitch completely. Being pushed into the endless deep space meant falling and being lost forever, which was equivalent to death. Gigi, baby Gigi, give me wisdom, what should I do? Yang Dingtian's lips began to tremble violently. That huge wave was getting closer and closer. It's over, we're really dead this time. Yang Dingtian held the treasure sword and trembled violently. Then, his mind had yet to think of a way, but his body reacted instinctively. The remaining ice profound chi surged out crazily. In an instant, the surrounding seawater was all frozen, freezing the two people and the beast. Yes. There's a way. Use the seawater to freeze and trap yourself. Then, Yang Dingtian turned all the remaining profound chi into ice profound chi and crazily released it. Crack. Suddenly, the surrounding seawater quickly froze into ice. 1 cubic meter, 2 cubic meters, 3 cubic meters. 10 cubic meters. 50 cubic meters. 100 cubic meters. Then, Yang Dingtian's profound chi was exhausted. His profound chi was originally not much left. Ling Bai, release ice profound chi to maintain the freezing of the seawater. Yang Dingtian ordered loudly. Oh, okay. Ling Bai exclaimed, and then desperately released ice profound chi. Boom. A huge wave of thousands of meters instantly surged over. It directly pushed Yang Dingtian and the beast, as well as the 100 cubic meters of ice, up a few thousand meters into the air. In an instant, the thrust generated was more than 10 million jin. And 100 cubic meters of ice, which was 200,000 jin, had to offset the 100,000 jin weight of Yang Dingtian and the beast under 20 times the anti-gravity. In an instant, the huge ice that wrapped around Yang Dingtian and the beast was suddenly thrown out of the sea, falling tens of thousands of meters into the air. Ling Bai suddenly screamed. Yang Dingtian watched as he was constantly being lifted into the air in the ice, higher and higher. His heart was getting colder and colder. It's over, it's really over. He thought, although the solidified ice could bind the two of them and the beast. However, it also separated the ice from the sea. The thrust of the huge wave would not only push him out, but also throw the huge ice into the sky. A full 50,000 meters. The huge ice was thrown 50,000 meters into the air. Then, the thrust seemed to be exhausted. In the end, the huge ice began to fall. It became faster and faster, and finally smashed into the sea. Yang Dingtian's heart was instantly filled with ecstasy. That's right, it was a success, a success. Although the huge ice would also be thrown into the deep air, it was not anti-gravity. With a weight of 200,000 jin, it could offset the 100,000 jin weight of Yang Dingtian and the beast. Therefore, after being thrown tens of thousands of meters into the air, it would eventually fall. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian's mind was filled with ideas. Interesting, interesting, very interesting. The weight of the two of them and the beast added together was about 100,000 jin. If only 110,000 jin of ice was solidified, it would only be 10,000 jin after cancelling each other out. If it was crazier, it could be 1,000 jin, or even 100 jin. With such weight, the consumption of mystic qi was negligible to Yang Dingtian. In this way, the speed of paddling could become incomparably fast. In fact, Yang Dingtian could even play wave-chasing expert. Once he thought of this, he could not stop. Yang Dingtian's mind began to spin rapidly. At this moment, Ling Bai was still injecting ice qi into it in a daze, solidifying it into ice. Yang Dingtian said, "Ling Bai, you don't have to do anything next. You just have to maintain this volume of ice. Can you do it?" Ling Bai nodded desperately. "I can do it, I can do it." Yang Dingtian said, "Ah Claw, the power of the waves here is very strong. They will push us anywhere. So what you have to do is to maintain the direction we want to go north at all times. As long as the direction is off, you have to immediately adjust back. Can you do it?" Ah Claw nodded, indicating that it was easy. Then, Yang Dingtian began to close his eyes in the ice to recover his battle qi. 6 hours later, Yang Dingtian's battle qi filled his qi sea. "Alright, leave the rest to me. You guys can start to rest," Yang Dingtian said. Immediately, Ling Bai heaved a sigh of relief and closed her eyes to recover her qi. Next, Yang Dingtian began to transform this huge piece of ice. His imagination ran wild as he transformed a huge round ice block into a gorgeous ice ship. 2 people and 1 beast were frozen in the ice boat. As for the weight of the ice boat, Yang Dingtian controlled it to be 150,000 jin. After offsetting each other, it was exactly 10,000 jin. Then, Yang Dingtian exposed his legs from the ice boat and went deep into the sea. He burst forth with qi and swam towards the north. Whoosh, God! This speed was truly astonishing. This huge ice boat carried 2 people and 1 beast and quickly sailed towards the north. In the first hour, the speed of the boat had actually reached 200 to 300 miles. Moreover, Yang Dingtian had even begun to try his best to avoid these huge waves. If he really couldn't avoid it, it didn't matter. He would be thrown into the sky, but he would eventually fall down. However, when he fell into the water, Yang Dingtian had to inject qi and very carefully use the recoil to slow down, so as to avoid directly smashing the ice boat into pieces. Under such circumstances, Yang Dingtian's qi was partly responsible for maintaining the ice boat's solidification and partly used to propel the ice boat. The qi in his body could actually last for a full 20 hours. When his qi was exhausted, the ice boat was handed over to Ling Bai. She only needed to be responsible for outputting ice-cold qi to maintain the ice boat. As for the Demon Eagle King, Ah Claw, he had to ensure that the bow of the boat was facing the north at all times and not get lost. Just like this, 2 people and 1 beast each divided the work and drove the ice boat towards the north. This 3rd stage seemed to be the most difficult, but unexpectedly, it was the easiest and simplest. Chapter 686. In the vast ocean of the 3rd stage, Yang Dingtian had completely become a wave-chasing expert. Day after day passed. He sailed for thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles, hundreds of thousands of miles. Yang Dingtian had already changed from a rookie to a complete wave-chasing expert. Now, He no longer dodged the huge waves. Even if it was a huge wave that was 10,000 meters tall, he dared to chase after it and enjoy being thrown to the top of the wave. Moreover, being thrown tens of thousands of meters into the sky almost never happened. Of course, accidents were not unheard of. There were a few times when he went overboard. When he saw the huge wave that was 10,000 meters tall, not only did he not dodge, he went straight up to it. It would be fine if the wave rose, but it just so happened that the wave fell. As a result, the huge wave that was 10,000 meters tall slammed down ferociously. His ice ship was instantly shattered into pieces. The demon eagle king, Azeo, had rough skin and thick flesh. Yang Dingtian circulated his mystic qi and resisted it. As for Ling Bai, she directly fainted. However, Yang Dingtian suspected that she was not knocked out by the huge wave, but fainted from fright. Fortunately, Yang Dingtian grabbed her tightly. Otherwise, she would have disappeared. That time, Yang Dingtian and the beast were slapped into the bottom of the sea for more than 10,000 meters. Even if they were 10,000 meters under the sea, they still could not see the bottom. Of course, the most dangerous thing was the terrifying lightning that filled the sky. These lightning bolts were hundreds and thousands of miles long. They were hundreds and thousands of times more energy than Yang Dingtian's mystic flame lightning. If the two humans and one beast were to be struck, they would die without a doubt and turn into ashes. Then, Yang Dingtian used a bloody black gold sword to stretch it and stood in front of the ice ship as a lightning rod. Otherwise, the huge lightning that filled the sky would definitely strike Yang Dingtian and the beast. However, after this lightning rod appeared, it became the highest point within a few hundred miles. Therefore, the lightning came frequently. The huge lightning that was hundreds and thousands of miles long suddenly struck down. That feeling was really frightening. It was right in front of their eyes. Then, through the bloody black gold sword, the lightning was directed directly into the sea. Although Yang Dingtian and the others were relatively close, the lightning instantly dispersed all the energy into the seawater. Therefore, when lightning struck, Yang Dingtian did not feel anything. At most, he only felt a slight numbness. But looking at this shocking lightning, which was crazily striking down, that kind of apocalyptic scene really made people feel like they were in heaven and wanted to die. During the craziest times, the lightning rod that Yang Dingtian had set up was struck by lightning more than 100 times within 2 hours. Ling Bai was so frightened that she burst into tears. Even if there was such a terrifying scene. But all in all, this vast ocean was Yang Dingtian's smoothest hurdle. When he was at his craziest, he advanced along with the power of the huge waves. In 2 hours, he actually advanced more than 400 miles, as if he was flying. On average, they could travel 100 to 200 miles in 2 hours. In a day, he could easily travel 1,000 to 2,000 miles. Therefore, the further they progressed, the less pressure they felt. Wasn't it just 200,000 miles? Anyway, there were enough pills. It would take about 100 days. And towards the end, Yang Dingtian's Xian Qi was enough to last for more than 10 hours. Then, he would use 6 hours to recover his Xian Qi. Just like that, when it was 100 days. Yang Dingtian, King Demon Vulture, and Ling Bai all looked up at the sky, waiting for the palace to appear. Although there was a torrential rain, lightning, and thunder, and visibility was not high. But this palace was so huge that it could be seen even from hundreds of miles away. And even if they couldn't see the palace, there would be an end to this vast ocean. The end was the void world. But 100 days later, after traveling 200,000 miles, they still didn't see the palace, nor the end. Yang Dingtian was a little worried, but he still didn't feel any pressure. 120 days later. 150 days later. There was still no end, no palace. Yang Dingtian panicked. If he remembered correctly, they had already traveled 300,000 miles. Moreover, they were definitely sailing in a straight line towards the north. Because they were in the vast ocean and the huge waves were surging, they could lose their direction at any time. So, Yang Dingtian used the resentful spirit of the million-spirit demon fire to draw an absolute straight line, a straight line that was not affected by any external forces. Yang Dingtian had been sailing in this straight line, so the direction was definitely not wrong. Then what was going on? Why was it that after 300,000 miles, they still hadn't reached the end, and they still hadn't seen the palace? Suddenly, Yang Dingtian and the beast began to fall into silence. Yang Dingtian steered the ice ship, constantly moving forward, forward, and forward. Time passed day by day. 180 days. 200 days. In the vast ocean, Yang Dingtian had already traveled 400,000 miles. But, there was still no end. Yang Dingtian even felt his whole body turn cold. A full 400,000 miles. Why hadn't they reached the end? What was going on? Yang Dingtian carried fear and an ice-cold heart as he continued to send the letter. 230 days. 250 days. 280 days. His sailing speed was already getting faster and faster, faster and faster. When it reached 290 days, Yang Dingtian had already sailed about 650,000 miles. After 650,000 miles, there was still no end. Yang Dingtian's heart was really almost in despair. It had been 320 days since they entered the vast ocean. Yang Dingtian had already sailed 830,000 miles. But, he still couldn't see the end. Yang Dingtian was really in despair. The hard rock plain was 200,000 miles. The raging flame plain was also 200,000 miles. So Yang Dingtian thought that this vast ocean was at most 200,000 miles. But now, after 800,000 miles, he still hadn't reached the end. What was going on? The entire chaotic world was not even 800,000 miles, right? From the Dongli grassland to the Snow Clan, it was only 100,000 miles. What was going on? How could this so-called taboo continent be so big? This wasn't realistic at all. Yang Dingtian once again entered a daze, entering a numb despair. He just kept sailing like this. In his heart, he faintly felt a cold fear. He was afraid of this scene. He kept sailing, and suddenly one day, he found that the void world appeared behind him, which meant that he had returned to the starting point, to the place where he set off. If that was the case, it would be the most despairing scene, the most terrifying result. In the Earth era, navigators sailed one round and returned to the starting point, proving that the Earth was round. This was a happy discovery. And if Yang Dingtian sailed one round and returned to the starting point, it would be complete despair. It almost meant that he was trapped and would never be able to leave. Not bad. The heavens didn't give the worst result, and didn't abuse Yang Dingtian. Yang Dingtian kept sailing. Not only did he not return to the starting point. Instead, one day, he suddenly reached the edge of the sea. That's right, he had indeed reached the end. What was at the end of the sea? It was a void world filled with strange lights. In the sky above the end, there was a crystal-clear palace floating. The first palace was made of shabby stone. The second palace was made of ice. The third palace seemed to be made of jade, and it was completely dark green. It was a very, very big palace, floating 1,000 meters above the sea. Looking at this dark green palace, Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the demon vulture king trembled all over, and tears almost flowed down their faces. Yang Dingtian was truly on the verge of despair. He was about to lose all hope. He didn't expect that this palace would suddenly appear. How far did Yang Dingtian sail? How far was this vast sea? It must be more than 1,000,000 miles. That's right, more than 1,000,000 miles. It was about 5 times more than the hard rock plain and the raging flame plain. He raised his head and looked at the jade palace in the sky for a full 15 minutes. Then, Yang Dingtian grabbed Ling Bai and the demon vulture king and suddenly cheered. Bang! 2 people and 1 beast rushed out of the ice ship and flew directly towards the palace. Swoosh swoosh. When they fell 1,000 meters, Yang Dingtian threw the demon vulture king and Ling Bai into the palace. Then, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the door of the palace. With a light leap, he jumped in. Wow! It's so comfortable, so comfortable. Almost at the first moment, he felt the surging and rich xian qi. This feeling, he hadn't felt for a long time, and it was too good. It was as if every cell had been nourished by energy. This comfortable feeling made him sleepy. He finally knew why the fruit after all the hardships was the sweetest. Now, lying motionless like this was the greatest enjoyment. Perhaps it was because this jade palace was too difficult to come by, so after Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the beast entered the palace, they didn't fall asleep. Yang Dingtian first used a treasure sword to shave his half-foot-long beard clean. There was no need to wash his clothes, and there was no need to wash his body because it was not dirty at all. For nearly a year, he had been bathing every day. Fortunately, he was protected by his xian qi, otherwise, his body would have been soaked long ago. This year, Yang Dingtian was the only one driving the ship. When he recovered his xian qi, the demon vulture king was responsible for controlling the direction. As for Ling Bai, she was responsible for releasing ice xian qi to maintain the ice ship. Therefore, Yang Dingtian's legs were much stronger. As for Ling Bai, she had become much whiter and fatter. Compared to when she was in the raging flame plains, she was at least 10 kilograms heavier. Yang Dingtian was astonished. Was this elixir really that nutritious? It could grow so much meat. After gaining weight, Ling Bai became 2 or 3 years younger. Now, Yang Dingtian had almost become an uncle, and Ling Bai had actually turned from a young woman to a young girl. Oh my god! However, after being plump, she looked even more beautiful. Her moving body curves even surpassed Madame Shiman. Her entire body was white and tender, her arms and fingers were all fleshy. However, her skeleton wasn't big, so she felt fleshy everywhere. Compared to Vulture, as a mother, Ling Bai was really much more beautiful. In addition, she had a completely submissive face, pure and exquisite, with a natural charm. With such beauty, it was no wonder that Wulingzi became a beast. In any case, recently, Yang Dingtian didn't dare to look at her face anymore. Counting it, he had been holding it in for more than 2 years. If he looked at her any longer, he would probably do something unbearable. The current Yang Dingtian was completely a pile of dry firewood, ignited at the slightest touch. Moreover, it was changing from dry firewood to white phosphorus. Once it turned into white phosphorus, it would be over. There was no need to light it. Because her clothes were wet and stuck to her body, Ling Bai immediately felt uncomfortable and carefully took off her outer clothes. Hey, hey, hey! What are you doing? Yang Dingtian's heart suddenly burst with fire as he pointed at Ling Bai and asked. At this moment, her clothes were sticking to her body, which really made people want to commit a crime. My clothes are wet and uncomfortable. Help me roast them with mystic fire. I only have Yin-type mystic fire, so it won't dry, Ling Bai said. Yang Dingtian took her clothes and turned his back to her as he silently recited, appearance is emptiness, appearance is emptiness. After reciting it 200 times, Yang Dingtian released the mystic fire and roasted Ling Bai's clothes. At this moment, Ling Bai appeared in front of Yang Dingtian again. What are you doing? Yang Dingtian roared loudly. I came over to the fire to dry my clothes, Ling Bai said. Don't come over. Don't appear in front of me like this. Be careful that I don't turn into a beast. Yang Dingtian said, go behind me. Take it off and I'll roast it for you. After cultivating, I must think of a way to leave this damned place. Otherwise, one day, I will become Vulture's godfather. After helping Ling Bai dry her clothes and letting her change, Yang Dingtian's breathing became more normal. No, I have to cultivate. After cultivating, I have to leave this damned place immediately. Yang Dingtian closed his eyes and tried his best to calm himself down. Then, he began to absorb mystic qi. In an instant, endless mystic qi crazily surged into Yang Dingtian's qi sea. The dried-up mystic meridians and qi sea were once again nourished and irrigated crazily after 300 days. And Yang Dingtian's qi sea seemed to have become a bottomless pit. Endless mystic qi poured in and still crazily swallowed it. 6 hours. 12 hours. 16 hours. Finally, that familiar swelling feeling came again. Swelling to the extreme. Boom! His entire body turned into nothingness again. Yang Dingtian broke through again. His entire qi sea sublimated and transformed again. That familiar feeling, that feeling of explosion. Chapter 687. Just like that, Yang Dingtian stared at the fallen black dragon. It was everywhere. Just like that, Yang Dingtian's gaze continued to chase after this fallen black dragon as he continued to move forward. More than 20 hours. More than 20 hours. More than 50 hours. The taboo continent was moving rapidly. After moving for more than 200,000 miles, the boundless void world came to an end. Up ahead, the fourth stage world opened. Yang Dingtian was helpless. He didn't want to continue cultivating. He just wanted to leave this place. However, the Jadeite Palace still brought him to the fourth stage. Yang Dingtian didn't even look at the fourth stage. He stared at the fallen black dragon. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian saw clearly that as the taboo continent moved, the fallen black dragon entered the fourth stage and disappeared without a trace. In the void world, Yang Dingtian could still see the fallen black dragon. However, after entering the fourth stage, he couldn't see it at all. At this moment, the fourth stage was getting closer and closer. As the taboo continent moved rapidly, he couldn't stop it and entered the fourth stage's sky. Subsequently, Yang Dingtian and Ling Bai were both shocked and they saw the scene before them. Although he didn't plan to continue cultivating, Yang Dingtian was very curious about the fourth stage's continent. The first stage was the hard rock plains. The entire world was flat and hard rock. The second stage was the flaming plains. There was deep magma everywhere. It was as if the rocks had been completely melted. The third stage was a boundless ocean. It was more than 1,000,000 miles long. There was also crazy and terrifying lightning. Then what was the fourth stage? Yang Dingtian had a vague answer to this taboo continent. According to the previous 3 stages, he had a vague answer. Therefore, the fourth stage was very important to discover the truth. In fact, the fourth stage's world was the key to Yang Dingtian finding the truth about the taboo continent. Then, what was the fourth stage's world in front of Yang Dingtian? It was still the ocean. Yes, it was the ocean. However, it was different from the vast ocean in the third stage. First of all, the waves weren't that big. It was a normal ocean. Secondly, the sun had appeared in the sky. That's right, Yang Dingtian felt like crying. He had been in the taboo continent for so long, and this was his first time seeing the sun. The wind was not strong, but it blew gently, raising waves on the surface of the sea. The ocean here was completely different from the ocean in the third stage. The ocean in the third stage was more than 1,000,000 miles long. It was completely abnormal. There were monstrous waves everywhere, and there was crazy lightning everywhere. The ocean here wasn't much different from the ocean of the chaos world outside. Not only that, Yang Dingtian also saw some reef islands. About a few hundred li away, they could actually see a large island. On the island, there was a huge mountain range. Yang Dingtian even felt like crying. In the world of three views, he could never see the mountains. Now, he could finally see them. However, there were still no signs of life. There were no animals or plants. The entire world was very quiet, and he couldn't feel any danger. And the jadeite palace was quietly floating in the sky, motionless. It had no intention of crashing, nor did it have any intention of being destroyed. Yang Dingtian held the soul sword in his hand. As expected, there was 40 times anti-gravity here. That meant that the time was 40 times longer than outside. Yang Dingtian took the initiative this time. He used the recoil force to jump down from the jadeite palace. Bang! 40 times the gravity. To jump down from the sea, Yang Dingtian and his beast needed more than 200,000 Jin of recoil force. As expected, the jadeite palace couldn't withstand it and was instantly shattered. Sigh. It was still destroyed. He jumped into the sea. Yang Dingtian immediately released his ice-profound chi and created an ice ship that weighed 200,000 Jin, which was 100 tons. Then, he rowed towards the north. The entire sea was very, very quiet. There was no sign of danger. There were no huge waves or anything. In just an hour, Yang Dingtian arrived at the island. There was a huge mountain on the island. Whether it was the island or the mountain, they were all rocks. The sun was scorching and there was already wind blowing. It was raining. Yang Dingtian saw that a portion of the rocks on the island had already cracked. If nothing unexpected happened, these rocks would crack layer by layer after being exposed to the wind and sun for many years. Then, they would peel off layer by layer and turn into fine powder. Finally, they would turn into soil. Of course, it was only cracking at the moment. After leaving the island, Yang Dingtian continued to create an ice ship and headed towards the north. This time, they sailed for 30,000 miles and arrived at a very, very huge island. It was about 1,000 miles in size. On the island, there was still nothing but rocks. Of course, there were also many mountains. And the degree of weathering of the rocks here was even more serious. Other than that, they still didn't find anything. Yang Dingtian continued to row the ice ship forward. They sailed for another 100,000 miles. At this moment, there was a sudden loud sound. Look! Ling Bai suddenly pointed to the sky. Then, Yang Dingtian saw an unprecedented spectacular scene. Endless meteorites, an endless meteor shower, were densely packed and crazily smashed down. It was completely innumerable. Whoosh 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 whoosh, almost the entire sky of the world was covered by the meteor shower. It was a real meteor shower. Moreover, after these meteorites entered, they began to burn fiercely. Immediately, the entire sky seemed to be burning. Endless flames crazily smashed into this world. Countless meteorites burned and smashed into the ocean. Immediately, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Mountains roared and tsunamis roared. The entire continent was violently shaking. The entire ocean began to roar and set off huge waves that soared into the sky. Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the beast desperately dodged this endless meteor shower under the 40 times anti-gravity. At this moment, Yang Dingtian was already an absolute wave-chasing expert. Although the meteor shower was extremely dense and there were crazy tsunamis everywhere, Yang Dingtian still quickly dodged these huge meteorites. However, the two men and the beast were completely nervous to the extreme. Although their cultivation was very high, these meteorites weighed hundreds of thousands to millions of kilograms. The sound of them smashing down from outer space was extremely shocking. Although Yang Dingtian was already a 5-star great grandmaster, if he was hit by a bastard, he would basically die without a doubt. Quick, 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 suddenly, Ling Bai shouted. Then, Yang Dingtian felt the sky turn dark. Then, he looked up and saw hundreds of densely packed large meteorites, fiercely smashing towards him within 100 miles radius. Yang Dingtian desperately controlled the ice ship and quickly dodged. He used all his strength. Bang! The ice ship that Yang Dingtian was on was smashed into pieces. Because there was no way to dodge at all. 15 minutes before the ice ship was smashed, Yang Dingtian used all his celestial qi and suddenly dove into the deepest part of the sea. Since there was no way to dodge these meteorites, then he had to dive into the deepest part of the sea to reduce the damage of the meteorites. Quick, 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 Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the beast desperately dove into the ground while frantically dodging the meteorites. Boom! At this moment, the entire bottom of the sea suddenly had a loud bang, an unprecedentedly loud bang. Then, the bottom of the sea completely tore open an incomparably huge hole. Immediately after, a fiery red light suddenly surged out from the bottom of the sea. It was magma, a volcanic eruption. The magma of the volcano at the bottom of the sea suddenly surged out. The volcanic crater, which was hundreds of kilometers in diameter, was extremely powerful. It was almost the energy of tens of thousands of nuclear bombs, and suddenly exploded. An incomparably huge amount of energy suddenly pushed Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the beast into the air in an instant. This force, even separated by seawater, was hundreds of millions, billions of kilograms, or even more energy. Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the beast did not have any room to resist at all, and suddenly rushed into the air. Swoosh, 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 Yang Dingtian was directly thrown into the air. This was 40 times anti-gravity. Once thrown into the air, there was no resistance at all. Yang Dingtian's entire body was ice cold. He watched helplessly as he fell into the deep space. In the first stage of the hard rock plain, he desperately resisted and did not fall into the deep space. In the second stage, he would rather use ice xian qi to freeze the magma so that he would not fall into the deep space. In the third stage, he made the ice boat so that he would not fall into the deep space. Because under the anti-gravity, once he fell into the deep space, it meant death, it meant loss, it meant that he was finished. It's over, it's completely over. Two people and a beast, holding each other's claws, kept falling, falling, falling. Ling Bai was incomparably panicked at first, but then, she gradually calmed down, and then slowly closed her eyes, waiting for the arrival of death. Just as she said, she was afraid of pain, but not afraid of death. At this moment, Yang Dingtian suddenly felt darkness in front of his eyes. Then, he raised his head abruptly and saw an incomparably huge meteorite crashing down from space. He did not know how big this meteorite was. Perhaps a few hundred miles in diameter, it was completely like a small planet. If such an incomparably huge meteorite hit Yang Dingtian, what would the consequences be? Without any accidents, he would instantly turn into ashes. Yang Dingtian looked on helplessly as this giant meteorite got closer and closer. Damn, could it be that not only would he be lost and drift to death, but he would also be smashed to death by the meteorite? Closer and closer. Closer and closer. Yang Dingtian could already clearly feel the huge energy coming towards him, as well as the raging flames. At any time, don't think that I'll just wait for death. Yang Dingtian suddenly roared, charge. Then, he burst out with all his xian qi. Whoosh. Then, he was directly sent flying. Instantly, he was completely stunned. How could he fly again? The demon vulture king was also completely stunned, and then, it flapped its wings. It discovered that it could fly too. Next was Ling Bai. She did not know any flying profound skills, so she used her xian qi energy to forcefully fly. She could fly too. Yang Dingtian was stunned. What was going on? What the hell was going on? In the first stage, second stage, and third stage, he could not fly. Why could he fly now? Why was this? However, at this moment, he could not care so much. 2 people and 1 beast flew with all their might, frantically avoiding the incomparably huge meteorite above their heads. Finally, Yang Dingtian dodged the fatal meteorite. At this moment, Yang Dingtian was still fine. His flying speed was very fast, and Ling Bai was not slow either. However, the demon vulture king, Zhao, was having a hard time flying. It was completely on the verge of collapse. Yang Dingtian understood that it was too heavy. Under 40 times the gravity, even if it flew normally, it was equivalent to carrying a weight of 200,000 jin. That was why it was so difficult to fly. Zhao, go to the big island in front and find a 200,000 jin rock to carry. Yang Dingtian said loudly. Then, 2 people and 1 beast desperately dodged the meteorites that filled the sky and flew towards the island in front. At this moment, the super meteorite with a diameter of a few hundred miles suddenly smashed into the sea. Immediately, the sky changed color. An earth-shattering loud noise. Yang Dingtian clearly felt that the entire world, the entire ocean, seemed to be about to completely collapse. This meteorite with a diameter of a few hundred miles suddenly smashed a puddle with a diameter of a few thousand miles in the ocean. Then, the endless seawater surged up, setting off shocking waves that were thousands of miles long and tens of thousands of meters high. The entire sea seemed to be completely torn apart. And the island in the distance, even though it was hundreds of miles away. However, like a child's toy, it was instantly shattered into pieces. The huge mountain suddenly collapsed and was torn apart. The boundless ocean completely changed crazily. Countless volcanoes instantly spewed out fiercely. Like incomparably gorgeous fireworks, countless huge volcanoes and countless fiery red magma spewed out. The entire world had undergone an earth-shattering change. Yang Dingtian, 2 people and 1 beast desperately dodging. Finally, the demon vulture king, Zhao, before the island completely disappeared, suddenly grabbed a huge rock. Although it was less than 200,000 jin, it was still more than 100,000 jin. Under the mutual cancellation, the demon vulture king, Zhao, suddenly only needed to carry a weight of more than 30,000 jin. This weight was completely incomparably easy for it. Almost instantly, its flying speed exceeded more than 1,000 miles per hour, almost reaching the speed of sound, much faster than Yang Dingtian. Yang Dingtian and Ling Bai immediately jumped on the back of the demon vulture king. This meteor shower lasted for a full 10 hours before it stopped. It was impossible to count how many huge meteorites fell into the sea. And the upheaval of the entire ocean had never stopped. Every day, the world was changing dramatically. Countless volcanoes erupted. Countless islands disappeared. Then, when Yang Dingtian advanced 250,000 miles, he saw with his own eyes that a continent slowly rose from the ocean. 2 people and 1 beast saw with their own eyes that a continent of tens of thousands of miles was born and tens of thousands of miles of ocean disappeared. This might be the first continent of this world. This continent still had nothing. There were stones everywhere, mottled and ferocious stones and towering mountains. At this time, traveling in this world had become extremely simple. The demon vulture king, Zhao, found a 200,000 jin boulder and put it on its back. With the two offsetting each other, its weight was almost zero. Therefore, its flying speed directly reached the speed of sound, less than 2,000 miles per hour. Moreover, the energy in its body was enough to support flying at high speed for 30 hours. And when it needed to rest, Yang Dingtian carried the demon vulture king, Ling Bai, and the boulder and flew. Similarly, this kind of zero-weight flight was completely effortless for Yang Dingtian. Therefore, Yang Dingtian was not in a hurry to go to the end of the 4th level continent. Just like this, he flew everywhere in the world of the 4th level, visiting the world and observing the upheaval of this world. Then, he saw with his own eyes that the oceans disappeared one by one and the continents were born one by one. He calculated clearly that this fourth-level world was also more than 1 million miles in length and breadth. And the continents that were born added up to nearly 100,000 miles in length and breadth. Just like this, Yang Dingtian did not care about how to get out for the time being. He flew around day by day, carefully observing this world and the birth of this new continent. Until one day, he saw a familiar pattern. That's right, although it was slightly different. But when he flew to a height of more than 100,000 meters, he could see it clearly. There was a land of about a few thousand miles below, and it looked exactly the same as the eastern cloud state. That's right, from a height of more than 100,000 meters, it was exactly the same. It was like a turtle poking out of the sea. In an instant, Yang Dingtian understood everything. Why couldn't he fly before? But now he could fly. That was because in the world of the first, second, and even third level, there was no gas. Without gas, there would be no aerodynamic force, and naturally, he could not fly. And the reason why the continent of the fourth level could fly was because there was gas. Then, how did this gas come about? Perhaps it was because of the change from the second level to the third level, the blazing plains, and then countless lightning crazily struck the sea, creating gas. Or perhaps it was because the sun appeared and created gas. In short, gas appeared in the world of the fourth level. Therefore, Yang Dingtian and the Demon Vulture King could fly again. Also, whether it was the first world, the second world, the third world, or the fourth world, it was not the so-called taboo continent at all. It was a chaotic world, just a chaotic world of different time and space. The first level, the second level, the third level, the fourth level, and so on. It was actually the evolution of the chaotic world in the long river of time and space. In the beginning, the chaotic world was a hard stone plain, as flat as a mirror. There was no air, no sun, nothing. Later, for some reason, this hard stone plain was subjected to a terrifying high temperature, and all of it melted, turning into countless magma. After that, it was unknown how many years, or millions, or even longer. Water appeared in this world, and the ocean became the only thing in this world, drowning everything in this world. Therefore, this world went from 200,000 miles to more than 1 million miles. The hard stone plain was completely submerged by the ocean. Then, it was unknown how many years had passed. The meteor shower erupted, bringing a shocking change to this world. Pieces of ocean disappeared, and pieces of land appeared. One of them was the eastern cloud state that Yang Dingtian was extremely familiar with. The so-called taboo continent was not for you to cultivate at all. Its theme was to let you completely understand this world from beginning to end. The whole world was still changing violently. However, Yang Dingtian did not need to watch anymore. He had already understood and completely understood. Okay, Zhu, let's go to the end of the fourth world. Yang Dingtian. Then, Demon Vulture King Zhu flew towards the northern end at a speed of 2,000 miles per hour. Only 2 days and 2 nights later, a palace floated at the end of the fourth world. This palace was still made of stone, but it was covered with some moss and algae. This was actually a preview of the next world. Are we still going to that palace? Ling Bai asked. Let's go. Yang Dingtian said, although I didn't stay in the fourth world for long and didn't cultivate hard, even a little breakthrough is good. Demon Vulture King Zhu easily flew into the palace and threw down the huge rock on his back. After entering the palace, Yang Dingtian immediately sat down cross-legged and prepared to start breathing. Ling Bai suddenly asked, Yang Dingtian, have you found a way out? Yang Dingtian nodded and said, I should have found it. Afterward, Yang Dingtian closed his eyes and started to absorb the mystic qi. The familiar profound energy once again surged into his qi sea. A few hours later, the familiar feeling of expansion came again. Expansion, expansion, expansion to the extreme. Chapter 688. Boom. Yang Dingtian's entire body, together with his divine sense, completely entered the void. He broke through again, finally breaking through from a 5-star 9th grade Great Grandmaster to a 6-star Great Grandmaster. However, that was all. After breaking through to the Great Grandmaster level, celestial qi continued to pour into Yang Dingtian's sea of qi. After a few hours, the sea of qi was filled with celestial qi and then trembled slightly. This meant that Yang Dingtian's cultivation had broken through to a 6-star 1st grade Great Grandmaster. Then, everything stopped. The celestial qi also stopped pouring in. Yang Dingtian's breakthrough was officially over. This time in the 4th world, Yang Dingtian barely broke through to 2nd grade, but in the end, he still reached his original expectations of a 6-star Great Grandmaster. This time, the total time in the 4th world did not exceed 2 months. In the chaotic world, it was less than 2 days. Ling Bai, did you break through? Yang Dingtian asked. Ling Bai shook her head. Ah Claw, what about you? Yang Dingtian asked. Ah Claw raised a finger and was very proud. Obviously, it had broken through to 8th grade 6th grade. Because in the 4th world, Ah Claw had spent more time cultivating than Yang Dingtian. Yang Dingtian, how do we get out? Ling Bai said, you just said that there is a way out. Yang Dingtian said, there is a way, but I'm not sure if this method is useful. Before leaving, I have to go to the 5th world. Why? Ling Bai asked, are you going to the 5th world to cultivate? If I'm not wrong, there should be no chance of a breakthrough in the 5th world, Yang Dingtian said. A few hours later, the taboo continent began to move quickly again. Soon, this hall of bluestone moss entered the void world. Yang Dingtian saw the ubiquitous fallen black dragon again. Yang Dingtian even saw it come in from the 4th world. Yang Dingtian could only see it when he was in the void world. At any other time, Yang Dingtian could not find it. He didn't know where it was in the 4th world and what it had done. Just like that, Yang Dingtian stared at these fallen black dragons. It twisted its mysterious body and swayed in the air as if it didn't know that Yang Dingtian was watching it. Perhaps it knew, but it didn't care at all. Just like that, more than 50 hours passed. Dian Yu rushed out of the void world, which was over 200,000 kilometers away, and arrived at the 5th world. The fallen black dragon also quickly entered the 5th world. Wow! Seeing the 5th world, Ling Bai suddenly cried out in surprise. This was because an incomparably mysterious and beautiful realization had appeared before Yang Dingtian's eyes. The sky here was almost exactly the same as the chaos world. The first thing he saw was still the sea. In the distance, there was still an island. On the island, there were not only rocks but also soil. Countless years of feng shui under the sun and watered by rain. These rocks weathered and shattered, turning into soil. Not only that, Yang Dingtian saw green on the island, which represented life. Without a doubt, it was already 80 times the gravity here. Ah Claw had already become 400,000 kilograms. 2 people and 1 beast suddenly leaped and used the rebound force to jump into the sea. In an instant, this bluestone mossy palace was instantly shattered. After entering the sea, Ah Claw immediately looked for boulders to offset the gravity. As for Yang Dingtian, he immediately looked for life at the bottom of the sea. Soon, he found life in the sea. It was a pile of insects, very small insects, and there were many kinds of insects. The big ones were less than half an inch, and the small ones couldn't be seen with the naked eye. In the entire sea, there was only this kind of insect. There was nothing else. Fish, sea beasts, nothing. Of course, there was also a rich variety of algae at the bottom of the sea. There were all kinds of algae, but the most abundant was still a kind of blue algae. Yang Dingtian held Ling Bai's hand and swam tirelessly at the bottom of the sea, observing all kinds of insects and algae. Unknowingly, there was a very romantic aura, after observing at the bottom of the sea for a few hours, Yang Dingtian could confirm that there were only two kinds of life in the entire sea. One was a very, very small insect that had probably just evolved from a single cell. The other was rich in algae. Abruptly rushing out of the sea, the demon vulture King Ajwa looked around and finally found another perfect load. This was a mysterious metal, probably from the meteorite rain of the last era. Its density was shockingly high, even surpassing bloody black gold. Yang Dingtian visually estimated that the density of this thing exceeded 50 tons per cubic meter. The piece on Ah Claw's back was only about 8 cubic meters, but it was 400,000 kilograms. Under the mutual cancellation, Ah Claw returned to the state of zero weight, and its flying speed began to frighten people to death again. "What are the things that you brought me to see just now?" Ling Bai asked. "The origin of life." Yang Dingtian said, "What did we see in total?" "Insects and some algae." Ling Bai said. "Insects are the origin of all animals, and algae are the origin of all plants." Yang Dingtian said. "Huh?" Ling Bai exclaimed, "It's true. We were actually transformed from those insects." "How did they transform?" "This is very, very complicated. I can't explain it clearly." Yang Dingtian said, "In short, these insects will become bigger and bigger after hundreds of millions of years of evolution at the bottom of the sea. Later, perhaps unintentionally or perhaps forced, they walked from the sea to the land and gradually became monkeys, and then from monkeys, they became humans." "Ah!" Ling Bai's small mouth opened so wide that an egg could almost be stuffed in. Then, her beautiful eyes blurred and she said admiringly, "You're really amazing. You know so much." Yang Dingtian immediately blushed. "By the way, where did these insects and algae come from?" Ling Bai asked. "I don't know about this." Yang Dingtian said, "Perhaps it was the volcanic eruption, lightning, and thunder that turned something into something called protein. Then, under extremely complicated conditions, it became a kind of life. Of course, there's another possibility. It was brought by those meteorites. Is it possible that it was caused by that fallen black dragon?" Ling Bai suddenly said. Immediately, Yang Dingtian was shocked and stared at Ling Bai without saying a word. I'm just talking nonsense," Ling Bai said embarrassedly. Yang Dingtian fell silent. The origin of life, according to Earth, was because of the high temperature, lightning, and other complicated environments. Some things changed from inorganic molecules to organic molecules, and then derived into proteins and nucleic acids. Then, the organic polymer system gradually evolved into primitive life. But, this theory could not be completely confirmed on Earth, let alone in the chaotic world. Then, what Ling Bai said, at least in the chaotic world, became very likely. Otherwise, why would this fallen black dragon accompany the entire era of the world? Yang Dingtian understood why it existed from the beginning to the end. In the void world, even if the world moved quickly, it was everywhere. Because it seemed to be eternal, just like time, it had always existed in this world. And after entering the third, fourth, and fifth worlds, it could not be seen again. Perhaps it was not because it could not be seen, but because it had turned into all things and gave birth to all things. If that was the case, didn't it mean that this so-called fallen black dragon was the ancestor of life in the chaotic world? Yang Dingtian rode the demon vulture king and flew to the huge island in front of him. At the junction of the sea and the land, he saw many algae plants. These algae kept spreading to the land and had already begun to change. They lay on the ground and turned into moss-like plants. Of course, they were only moss-like plants. They didn't seem to have evolved into ferns yet. But seeing that the entire island was full of moss-like plants, the green feeling was already incomparably beautiful. Next, Yang Dingtian began to observe the entire fifth world. At this time, the land of the world had basically been formed. Yang Dingtian also roughly saw the northwest continent, the central continent, the ice and snow of the north, and so on. However, at this time, there was no ice and snow. Even the ice and snow seemed very warm. Of course, the land of this era was still very different from the land of the chaotic world. At least, Yang Dingtian didn't see the southern barbarian continent, nor did he see the existence of the Dongli continent. And the northwest continent and the southwest continent were still a complete continent. The central continent also didn't complete the three parts, but a complete large piece of land. The land was 50 to 60,000 miles in length and breadth. In terms of area, it was a full billion square kilometers. As for animals, they were still in the sea and were all in the state of thread-like animals. According to the theory of life on Earth, they were basically at the fork in the road of great evolution. Next, they would evolve into echinoderms and mollusks. Then, they would evolve into fish, amphibians, and mammals. But so far, all life was still in the state of thread-like animals. All plants were basically in the state of algae and moss. Of course, Yang Dingtian was pleasantly surprised to find a forerunner of life on an island, a fern. If it continued to evolve, it would become gymnosperms and angiosperms. Then, it would be very similar to the current plant ecology of the chaotic world. The evolutionary history of plants seemed to be much faster than that of animals. After observing in the fifth world for 3 months, Yang Dingtian arrived at the end of the fifth world. Yang Dingtian saw a new palace. And this palace was very ferocious and terrifying. It was made of bones, very, very huge bones. Obviously, it came from an incomparably huge animal. This was the preview of the next world. In the bone palace, Yang Dingtian tried to breathe in and out. But without a doubt, there was no breakthrough at all. Because these few months couldn't be considered as painstaking cultivation at all. It could only be considered as observation and sightseeing. However, Ling Bai seemed to be fascinated by this world, this quiet and beautiful world. Without a doubt, the fifth world should be the most beautiful and quiet world. There was no danger at all. Next, there would undoubtedly be danger. Yang Dingtian, why don't we not go out, okay? Ling Bai suddenly said, the world here is so beautiful. Why should we go out? Fool, the world here is fake, Yang Dingtian said. Fake? How is that possible? Ling Bai said. First of all, in the first world, second world, and third world, there is no air. We can't breathe, and sound can't be transmitted. However, in fact, we can breathe and transmit sound. Yang Dingtian said, we are not in the taboo continent at all. We are just observing the evolution of the chaotic world. Everything we've experienced is fake. It's just an illusion in our minds. No, impossible. It's real, it's real. Ling Bai suddenly shouted, then ran up and pinched Yang Dingtian. Does it hurt? Does it hurt? It hurts, Yang Dingtian said. Then, Ling Bai suddenly kissed Yang Dingtian on the lips. Then, as if she had been electrocuted, her whole body suddenly trembled. Look, it's so real. How can it be fake? Ling Bai cried. Yes, it's real that you pinched me. Yang Dingtian said, however, other than the two of us and the beast, everything else in this world is fake. It's all an illusion. You said that this world is fake. Then if we were electrocuted and smashed to death, it was also fake. Our cultivation and breakthroughs were also fake. Ling Bai said loudly. No, our cultivation breakthroughs are real. Even if this illusion is fake, our bodies and minds have indeed gone through arduous training. Our battles and the output of our profound qi are all real. If we were electrocuted and smashed to death, it would also be real. Because our brains thought that we were smashed to death, then it would stop all work and let us die. Yang Dingtian said. Ling Bai stared at Yang Dingtian for a long time, gritted her teeth, and said, anyway, I don't care what you say. I'll take it as real. Then, she sat in the corner of the hall, hugged her head, and cried with her back facing Yang Dingtian. This woman seemed to know nothing else other than crying. She cried for several hours. The taboo continent began to move quickly again. They entered the void world again and saw the fallen black dragon again. Yang Dingtian, when are we going out? Ling Bai asked, how are we going out? Yang Dingtian said, according to the so-called theory of the taboo continent, we need to finish watching the entire history of the taboo continent before we can come out. We can only come out when the time and space of the illusion and reality completely overlap. In other words, we still have to look billions of years ahead. Ah! Ling Bai immediately exclaimed, then how long do we have to look at it? I don't know. Maybe a few hundred years, maybe a few decades. Yang Dingtian said. Then what should we do? Ling Bai exclaimed. Don't worry, I have a way to get out. Yang Dingtian said, when we reach the sixth world, we will take a look and stay for a moment. Then, we will leave this place immediately. Okay, Ling Bai said. Then, she was full of anticipation. She wanted to see how Yang Dingtian would get out. Chapter 689. How to leave this so-called illusion of the taboo continent. Yang Dingtian's first thought was that when the time in the illusion caught up with the time in reality. When reality and illusion merged into one, it would automatically come out. Because the time in the illusion flew fast, it couldn't exceed reality. But even if the time in the illusion flew fast, accelerated by dozens or hundreds of times. But from the beginning of the chaos world until now, it had been at least billions of years. How many years would it take in the illusion, only God knew. Therefore, he couldn't leave this illusion using this method. Then, what method did he need to use? Directly fall into the deep space? That wouldn't do, he would be lost and even die. Or, directly jump into the void world? That also wouldn't do, he would be completely lost. Or, directly attack that fallen black dragon? That probably wouldn't do, it was completely courting death. Then, how could he get out? Yang Dingtian's idea was to break the logic of this illusion. Making the entire illusion collapse, he would automatically leave. But before that, Yang Dingtian still had to take a look at the sixth world. More than 50 hours later. The palace flew out of the void world and entered the sixth world. What entered his eyes was still the quiet and peaceful ocean, as well as the blue sky that seemed to have been washed by water. The island not far away was already lush and full of all kinds of tall plants. It was mainly ferns, and there were also incomparably huge trees with large leaves, about a few hundred meters tall. The entire island was lush and full of vitality. Yang Dingtian looked carefully. There were many plants on this island, a small portion could still be seen in the chaos world, but most of them had already gone extinct. It was already 160 times the gravity here, which had already reached the limit of the Demon Vulture King. The Demon Vulture King was very powerful, but it couldn't fly while carrying 800,000 jin. Therefore, in this world, Yang Dingtian could only take a look and leave. Still staying in the Bone Palace, Yang Dingtian looked at the sky, the land, and the sea greedily. At this time, the creatures in the sea were completely diverse. All kinds of fish, all kinds of sea beasts. Most of them had never been seen before. Ling Bai was stunned. The animals in the sea were too strange and fun. As for the Demon Vulture King, it was drooling. It had not eaten meat for a long time. It wasn't just Yang Dingtian. Ling Bai also stuck out her tongue and kept licking. For the past few years, he had been eating medicinal pills. Although Yang Dingtian had brought a lot of medicinal pills, one pill could last for a few days. However, medicinal pills did not taste good after all. Alright, don't be greedy. I'll go catch a few fish to roast for you guys, Yang Dingtian said. Great. Ling Bai immediately cheered. Then, she said, this isn't an illusion, right? These fish should be fake. They don't exist, so we can't eat them. Yang Dingtian, although I didn't really eat it, the taste and feeling are exactly the same. Then, Yang Dingtian flew out of the palace. Although there was 160 times anti-gravity here, Yang Dingtian's weight had directly exceeded 20,000 kilograms. However, this weight was nothing to the current Yang Dingtian. With ease, Yang Dingtian directly dived into the sea. Instantly, all kinds of fish and sea beasts fled for their lives. Yang Dingtian chose among the countless fish and found the most delicious one. At least more than half of the fish in front of him were unknown to Yang Dingtian. They had already gone extinct in the real chaos world. Because in front of him was the chaos world from hundreds of millions of years ago. Dragon face fish. Yang Dingtian was pleasantly surprised to find that there was actually a dragon face fish, and it was a red one. Dragon face fish was the most expensive and most delicious fish in the chaos world. It was already very rare in the real chaos world. Only long-distance fishing boats could catch this kind of dragon face fish in the sea tens of thousands of miles away. Therefore, the price of a dragon face fish was equivalent to 5 to 6 years of living expenses for a family of 5. When Yang Dingtian was still the lord of Cloud Sky City, it was not easy to eat dragon face fish. The reason why dragon face fish was called dragon face fish was because its face was very similar to a dragon's and it had 2 long whiskers. It wasn't a monster, but it could spit out water arrows. An adult dragon face fish could also spit out ice arrows, which had a certain degree of lethality. Moreover, it was very strong, so there was a certain degree of risk in capturing it. The dragon face fish in front of him was very big. It was more than 5 meters long and weighed hundreds of kilograms. Its body was also somewhat like a dragon. Its scales were complex and delicate. It swam very fast and when it bent, it had great strength. Seeing Yang Dingtian, it fled like lightning. But how could Yang Dingtian let it escape? He easily caught the dragon face fish. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Sure enough, water arrows were shot out, but there were no ice arrows. After being caught by Yang Dingtian, the dragon face fish struggled desperately, and it actually had the strength of nearly 1,000 kilograms. Now in the chaos world, it was considered amazing to catch a dragon face fish that weighed 10 kilograms. And the one in front of him was more than 100 kilograms. With this huge dragon face fish, Yang Dingtian flew into the hall. Suddenly, the demon vulture king's eyes turned green and he wanted to slap it to death. Don't slap it to death," Yang Dingtian said. Then, a bolt of lightning burst out from his finger and struck down. In an instant, the dragon face fish was electrocuted to death. Its entire body was still in the state of struggling desperately. Its muscles were all tense. Then, Yang Dingtian used a sword to cut open its belly and scraped off the scales. He touched salt, spices, basil leaves, mo luo flowers and so on. Ling Bai was stunned. Coming to the taboo continent for an adventure, he actually brought so many seasonings. After applying the seasonings and spices, Yang Dingtian didn't wait for the marinating and soaking process as he used his mystic qi to force the flavor of these spices into the meat. Then, he summoned the mystic fire and began to roast it at the highest temperature. Soon, an incomparably enchanting fragrance filled the air. The demon vulture king's mouth was already closed, drooping and drooping. Droplets of saliva fell into the deep air. Ling Bai also kept licking her lips, swallowing mouthfuls of saliva. More than half an hour later, the dragon face fish was roasted. That perplexing fragrance was enough to drive anyone crazy. The whole fish was completely crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Damn! Yang Dingtian pulled out his sharp sword and chopped the fish into 3 pieces. One piece weighed 3 kilograms, one piece weighed 1 kilogram, and one piece weighed 100 kilograms. The one that weighed 3 kilograms was eaten by Yang Dingtian. The 1 kilogram piece was eaten by Ling Bai, and the rest was eaten by the demon vulture king. After the fish was in their hands, the 2 people and 1 beast did not say a word. They directly threw their faces on the fish and took big bites. Too damn delicious. This dragon face fish was extremely strong, and its meat was thin, tight and fragrant. Moreover, it was a saltwater fish, so it naturally had a taste. It was delicious without salt and seasoning, not to mention that Yang Dingtian used rich seasoning and fragrance. This kind of deliciousness was really, furthermore, Yang Dingtian, the human, and the beast hadn't eaten any food for 3 years. The demon vulture king, Azeo, held the big fish in his 2 claws, eating and crying. Yang Dingtian took a bite and savored the aftertaste for a long time. And Ling Bai was actually the one who ate the most. Her cherry mouth opened to the maximum, and with 1 bite, her white little teeth bit off a large piece of meat. Therefore, when Yang Dingtian only had 2/3 left, she had already licked the bones and meat clean. Then, her gaze fell on Yang Dingtian's fish. She, a woman, could actually eat 1 kilogram, and it was as if she was not full. Yang Dingtian pretended not to see it and lowered his head to eat. Ling Bai looked at the demon vulture king again. Claw's body trembled. It was reluctant to eat. It ate the slowest, and there were still a few dozen kilograms left. Seeing Ling Bai's gaze, it suddenly opened its mouth and stuffed dozens of kilograms of fish into its mouth. It was covered with its own saliva, and then it took it out and ate it 1 bite at a time. Claw, can you be any more disgusting? Yang Dingtian was speechless. The demon vulture king did not dare to be rash and also began to eat heartily. After eating, 2 people and 1 beast lay on the ground comfortably, rubbing their stomachs to digest the food. Although this was an illusion, it was exactly the same as reality. That delicious taste, that feeling of being full. Okay, we should go, it's time to go out. Yang Dingtian said. Woo. Suddenly, a very delicate and cute voice came from the sea below. Ling Bai's eyes lit up. What animal is it? It must be very cute. Then, she poked her head down to look. Woo. Woo. Sure enough, it was a very delicate voice, like a puppy that had just been born and had not been weaned. Therefore, Yang Dingtian and the demon vulture king also poked their heads down to look. Woo. Woo. This delicate and cute voice continued to be heard. Boom. Then, there was a loud noise. An incomparably huge monster suddenly soared into the sky. Fuck, this monster was so ferocious, terrifying that it could not be described with words. How big was this monster? Was Xiao Xiao big enough? It was even bigger than Xiao Xiao. It rushed up 1,000 meters, and it was just its mouth. This delicate voice that was like a puppy that had not been weaned was actually made by it. What was this thing? A fierce head, blood-red eyes, and sharp teeth that were more than 10 meters long. Its whole body was covered with scales that were as hard as knives, and its neck had sharp barbs that were dozens of meters long. At this time, Yang Dingtian's palace was floating 4,000 to 5,000 meters above the sea. This monster was about to rush over in an instant and swallow Yang Dingtian along with the palace hall with its mouth. The key was that it was already 4,000 to 5,000 meters high, and only its neck was exposed. In the distance, the sky suddenly darkened, and then a dark cloud floated over. No, this was not a dark cloud. It was also a fucking monster, a monster that could fly. The demon vulture king was more than 30 meters long, which was already big enough. But in front of this monster, it was like an ant. That monster that was flying over was so huge that it covered the entire sky. How big was it? When it spread its wings, it was at least a few dozen miles wide. Oh my God! Was this the Jurassic era of the Chaos world? The overlords of this world were so huge, sooner or later they would be extinct. The ecology was completely out of balance. seeing that the monster that rushed up from the sea was about to swallow Yang Dingtian and the demon vulture king in one gulp. Yang Dingtian used up all his qi and suddenly burst out a demon sky-splitting lightning. The demon sky-splitting lightning of a 6-star great grandmaster was extremely shocking. It was thousands of meters long and dozens of meters thick, and it fiercely struck the monster's head. Ah woo! The monster was in pain and screamed. Its entire head was split open with a wound that was dozens of meters long and 2 to 3 meters deep. However, that was all. It was safe and sound. After pausing for a moment, it still wanted to rush up. Fuck. This thing was much stronger than Xiao Xiao, who had gone berserk. Even if Yang Dingtian was a 6-star great grandmaster, there was nothing he could do. This 6th world was already extremely dangerous. Even if Yang Dingtian's cultivation was very high, it was equivalent to a modern human who had transmigrated to the Jurassic era with a submachine gun. Those bullets were useless against a big dinosaur. The overlord of this world was completely at the top of the biological chain. Even if a human's cultivation was strong, they were far from being a match for it. Run, use all your strength and rush into the void world, Yang Dingtian shouted. Then, holding the demon vulture king Ah Zhao with one hand and Ling Bai with the other, he poured in all his qi and leaped. Suddenly, 2 people and 1 beast shot out hundreds of meters like a cannonball. Whoosh! The 2 people and 1 beast only felt a chill all over their bodies as they entered the void world. And the monster behind them was still ferociously chasing after them. However, the moment its big mouth rushed into the void world, it instantly turned into ashes. Then, its entire incomparably huge body was instantly shattered and completely disappeared. After entering the void world, all the 100-fold anti-gravity completely disappeared. Here, it became zero gravity and completely isolated space. What should we do? Ling Bai asked. However, Yang Dingtian couldn't hear any sound. When he was in the palace, he could still communicate and transmit sound. But when he was alone in the void world, he couldn't hear any sound. Then, Yang Dingtian suddenly discovered that the void world below began to move quickly again, directly throwing Yang Dingtian and Ling Bai out of the void world. Oh, to be precise, it didn't start moving again, but it was moving all the time. Yang Dingtian understood that this void world was moving all the time. And the first world, the second world, and so on were immobile. Yang Dingtian didn't reach the end of a world, and a palace would appear there. This palace would drift slightly. Once it entered the void world a little, it would enter completely. And the void world was moving all the time at a speed of 2,000 miles per hour. In fact, the movement of the void world was not real space movement, but space-time movement. Yang Dingtian didn't know how long it would take to cross the void world every time. Perhaps it was hundreds of millions of years, or perhaps billions of years. But in short, from the first world, the second world, all the way to the 6th world, the interval between each 2 worlds was at least hundreds of millions of years. Towards the end, the interval would definitely become shorter and shorter, because the further it went, the faster the evolution of the chaotic world would be. It seemed that Yang Dingtian was about to be thrown out of the void world and return to the 6th world. Yang Dingtian suddenly released the mystic fire and rushed out from behind. Immediately, he transformed into a rocket and flew out quickly. It was completely opposite to the direction of the void world's movement. In the void world, there was completely zero gravity, so the speed of Yang Dingtian's mystic fire instantly exceeded 2,000 miles per hour. Therefore, he flew in the reverse direction in the void world. Ling Bai couldn't breathe, and then she began to be surprised. Was he flying back to the 5th world? Of course not. The movement of the void world was actually the rapid passage of time. Time couldn't be reversed, but Yang Dingtian used the mystic fire to forcefully reverse time. Then, it destroyed the logic of the entire illusion. In an instant, the order of the entire illusion completely collapsed. Everyone clearly felt that the void world in front of them began to distort, spin, collapse, and tear apart. Then, the entire void world evolved into a kaleidoscope-like passage, spinning and distorting rapidly. It was extremely fast. Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the beasts' minds were instantly confused, and then they completely fainted. After an unknown period of time, Yang Dingtian slowly opened his eyes. He found himself in a huge palace. King Demon Vulture Azu and Ling Bai were lying beside him. That's right, this was the real world. Everything he had experienced in the past few years, everything in the taboo continent, was an illusion. What was this palace? A secret realm? Or something else? Yang Dingtian got up. This palace didn't have anti-gravity, only normal gravity. Above his head was an incomparably gorgeous dome. This palace was about a few thousand square meters. It was empty inside, and there was nothing inside. Around him were 4 incomparably huge doors. There was a huge door in front, behind, left, and right. These 4 doors, each of them was nearly 100 meters tall and dozens of meters wide. The color of each door was different. The door on Yang Dingtian's left was silver. The door on the right was black. The clothes in the front were green. The one at the back was colorless. But he didn't know where each door led to. If he wanted to return to the chaos world, which door should he choose? Yang Dingtian was suddenly in a dilemma. He really didn't know which door to choose. He didn't know, once he opened a door, if he chose wrong, could he come back and choose again? If after choosing a door, he couldn't come back again, then this choice was incomparably cautious. Yang Dingtian began to study these 4 doors hard. Which one was the one to return to the chaos world? Silver? Green? Black? Colorless? These 4 colors didn't seem to be very special. However, he should be able to use the elimination method. First of all, black could be eliminated, because the chaos world was still difficult to describe as dark. Then, silver could also be eliminated. No matter from which perspective, it was difficult to use silver to describe the chaos world. What was left was only green and colorless. If one considered the vitality, then it should be green. But chaos, in a sense, represented colorless. It must be between these 2 doors. He didn't know how to choose. At this moment, Yang Dingtian suddenly saw a dark green pendant on the ground, falling in front of the silver door. What a familiar pendant. It was very cheap, and it was a gift from Yang Dingtian. It was almost the only gift he gave Bingling. Dongfang Bingling has been here before. Yang Dingtian's heart suddenly trembled. Chapter 690. Yang Dingtian picked up the pendant. That's right, this was indeed Dongfang Bingling's pendant. Yang Dingtian had bought it in a market in the fringe. It was a very cheap trinket. Yang Dingtian had bought it as a gift for Bingling because of the peddler's recommendation. Yang Dingtian put it under his nose and sniffed it. It seemed to have the fragrance of Bingling. Dongfang Bingling had been here before. What was she doing here? What was she trying to do by throwing this pendant on the ground outside the silver door? Could it be that she was trying to tell Yang Dingtian that he should go through the silver door? That shouldn't be the case. Yang Dingtian had already ruled out the possibility of the silver door. No matter what, the chaotic world couldn't be described as silver. Did that mean that Dongfang Bingling had entered the silver door? If so, where did this silver door lead to? What was Bingling doing here? Thinking that Dongfang Bingling might be behind the silver door, Yang Dingtian couldn't help but feel excited. He even had an impulse to push open the silver door to find Bingling. But soon, Yang Dingtian suppressed this impulse. The most important thing to Yang Dingtian now was Wu Yuming. Only after defeating Wu Yuming would his opponent become Dongfang Bingling. Moreover, she was no longer Dongfang Bingling, but Princess Mu Dan. Perhaps Bing Ling had only one purpose for throwing the pendant outside, and that was to pick it up and take it away. At this moment, Ling Bai let out a low moan and woke up. Her eyes were still in a daze. After a long while, she said, "So, everything we experienced just now was fake. It was all an illusion." Yang Dingtian continued to pace back and forth in the hall. It was really strange. There was really nothing in this hall. It was empty. Why was there such a huge amount of mental energy that led Yang Dingtian to the so-called taboo continent? Moreover, although everything in the illusion was fake, the extremely rich Xian Qi was indeed real. Yang Dingtian's 6-star great-grandmaster cultivation was also real. But at this moment, Yang Dingtian could clearly sense that there might be some mystic qi in this main hall, but it was relatively thin. Where was this place? How did Yang Dingtian come in? We're going out. Ling Bai, which door do you think we should choose? Yang Dingtian asked. There are a total of 4 doors. Here. Ling Bai rubbed her eyes and began to carefully observe the 4 doors. Do you really want me to choose? Ling Bai suddenly asked. Yang Dingtian replied, Of course, I trust your intuition. Ling Bai's finger immediately pointed at the colorless one. Are you sure? Yang Dingtian asked. Ling Bai nodded. Chaos is colorless. I believe you. Yang Dingtian said. Then, Yang Dingtian walked directly to the colorless door and pushed it hard. The colorless door did not move at all. Yang Dingtian was shocked. Then, he operated his Xian Qi and pushed hard. This time, Yang Dingtian's strength was hundreds of thousands of kilograms. However, the colorless door still did not move. What was going on? It could not be opened. Ah Zhao, you're strong. Come and help. Yang Dingtian said. The demon eagle king Ah Zhao, who woke up, shook his head hard. Then, he walked over and used his huge body to block the door. The strength of the demon eagle king Ah Zhao could be said to be quite strong. However, the colorless door remained motionless. It was truly too strange. After a full quarter of an hour, Yang Dingtian gave up the idea of pushing open the colorless door. He roughly understood that unless the door opened on its own, it would be impossible to open it. Because Yang Dingtian used a soul sword close to the emperor grade to stab the colorless door, but it could not be damaged at all. Yang Dingtian used the million spirit demon fire to condense to the extreme and burn the door, but it could not be damaged at all. Without a doubt, this was an energy door. It was not afraid of any force or energy damage at all. Unless it opened on its own, no one could open it. Yang Dingtian thought for a while. Then, he walked to the silver door and pushed it hard. Sure enough, it still did not move. Dongfang Bingling might have entered from this door, but Yang Dingtian could not open it even with all his strength. Then, Yang Dingtian came to the black door and pushed it with all his strength. He found that it also did not move. The 3 doors could not be opened. The only one left was the green door. There was no need to choose. Moreover, Yang Dingtian suspected that it was this green door that led to the chaotic world. Yang Dingtian came to the green door and took a deep breath. Then, he pushed it hard. Then, it still did not move. Yang Dingtian was really shocked. What was going on? Why was it still not moving? What was going on? This was really strange. None of the 4 doors could be opened. Then how should he get out? Yang Dingtian and Ling Bai looked at each other and exchanged a shocked expression. Then, Yang Dingtian suddenly soared into the sky and wanted to break out of the dome. However, this dome was still an energy substance. It was not afraid of any damage. It was impossible to get out. Next, Yang Dingtian used the soul sword close to the emperor grade to desperately hack the floor of the hall. Still, it did not move. Front, back, left, right, up, down, a total of 6 sides. None of them could get out. Suddenly, young Dingtian really faced an unprecedented trouble. After he woke up from the taboo continent's illusion, he was actually trapped in this hall and could not get out. Moreover, what time was it in the chaotic world right now? Young Dingtian was also already vague. He did not know how long there was before Wu Yoming's duel, but it was definitely not more than half a month. If he could not get out, then wouldn't it be over? Following that, time passed day by day. Yang Dingtian really thought of all the methods, but he could not open a door at all. There was no possibility of getting out at all. Yang Dingtian gradually became incomparably irritable and anxious. In the end, these emotions evolved into a kind of gloominess and despair. There was simply no possibility of getting out at all. At this time, Yang Dingtian really longed for this silver door to open and then Dongfang Bingling to walk out from inside. Even if she killed him with a sword, it was better than being trapped in this place alive. Time was like that. Ignoring the anxiety in Yang Dingtian's heart, day by day still passed. In fact, Yang Dingtian even felt that the date of his duel with Wu Yuming had really passed. These days, Yang Dingtian did not sleep or rest. He really thought of all the methods, but he could not find any way to get out. It could be said that other than suicide, Yang Dingtian had used all the methods. It was completely useless. He could not get out at all. Just like that, day by day passed. Yang Dingtian's heart became colder and colder. Then, he lay on the ground, staring at this green door, motionless. Suddenly, the green door suddenly opened. Yang Dingtian was shocked. This was not an illusion, not an illusion. The green door really opened. Then, a figure suddenly entered the main hall from outside and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. That's right, after this graceful figure entered the main hall, it completely disappeared into the air in the blink of an eye. Everything was so fast that Yang Dingtian did not even have time to see who this figure was before it disappeared. At this time, the opened green door was closing again. There was no time to think about why this figure disappeared without a trace after entering the main hall. Yang Dingtian grabbed Ling Bai with one hand and the demon vulture king with the other. Using his fastest speed, he rushed out of the green door like lightning. At this time, there was no time to care about what kind of world was behind this green door. Which world was it? Swoosh! The moment he rushed out of the door, Yang Dingtian saw that outside the main hall was a strange space, a purple void world. Then, he saw this main hall floating in the void world from the outside. It was a hall in the shape of a human head. Outside the void world, there were many figures floating. Most of the figures were already motionless. Only one was walking and moving. These figures might have come to the taboo continent to adventure, but they were completely lost inside and were already dead. And the one walking in the void world might be the figure that had just entered. However, looking from the void world, her figure was distorted and deformed. It was impossible to recognize her. Then, Yang Dingtian still saw the fallen black dragon swimming around here. Of course, seeing so many scenes, for Yang Dingtian, it was actually just a moment, less than half a second. After rushing out of the green door. In less than half a second, the world in front of Yang Dingtian began to spin and distort. Then, he fainted instantly. When he woke up again, Yang Dingtian, Ling Bai, and the demon vulture king were falling from the sky. Above them was the sky illuminated by the sun, and below them was the green ocean. Yang Dingtian's heart trembled. This scene was similar to the illusion in the taboo continent. Especially in the 4th, 5th, and 6th worlds, every time he entered, it was the sky and the ocean. Yang Dingtian hurriedly took out the treasure sword in his hand. Fortunately, there was no anti-gravity or several times the gravity. This should be the real chaotic world. Yang Dingtian still didn't dare to be rash and continued to carefully observe this world. Here, everything that could be seen was the sea and the sky. There were no other references, nor were there any islands. Yang Dingtian and Ling Bai rode on the Demon Vulture King and flew towards the east at full speed. Only a few hours later, Yang Dingtian confirmed that this was the real world. It was because he saw a familiar figure and heard a familiar voice. It was Wu Maji. Moreover, she was fighting with someone. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.